come to order. A quorum of more than 175 is present. With your permission, we will waive the reading of the constable's return of the warrant. Welcome to Dover's 2016 Annual Town Meeting. While you are getting to your seats, a few preliminaries. The fire chief reminds us that there is no smoking in the building and no sitting in the aisles or on the stairs. Please place your cell phone in airplane mode or turn it off. A few years ago, we had problems with our PA system because of interactions with cell phones. Throughout the auditorium tonight, and as you entered the building, you saw 20 or so residents with name tags and orange bibs on. These individuals have been designated by the town clerk to help ensure the smooth running of tonight's meeting. As the evening progresses, please follow their instructions and give them your attention as they assist in vote counting. We thank those residents for their willingness to work tonight. In addition, the following Dover Boy Scouts are serving as pages: Bobby Giassi, Varun Jayante, and Oliver Freed. These pages will be responsible for bringing a microphone to anyone in the audience who has been recognized by the moderator. Non-voters and non-residents are welcome to attend our town meeting, but to ensure that they are not involved in the counting, I have asked registrars to give visitors a name tag indicating their non-voting status. They should be seated in the area designated to my left or in a designated area in the cafeteria. Our guests tonight include our state representative, Denise Garlick. Thank you, Representative Garlick, for your service to Dover. Some introductions. I am Jim Rapetti, the moderator for the town of Dover, and in that role will oversee tonight's proceedings. On your left, my right, we have Bill Leahy, Town Council, Dave Havlin, Assistant Town Moderator, Felicia Hoffman, Town Clerk, James Dowley, Chair of the Board of Selectmen, Robin Hunter, Secretary of the Board of Selectmen, and Candace McCann, Member of the Board of Selectmen. In addition, we have our Town Executive, David Ramsey. On my left, your right, we have the Warrant Committee, Douglas Lawrence, Chair of the Warrant Committee, Candace McCann, I'm sorry, Kate Canny, I lost my script already. Kate Canny, who will be taking over as Chair of the Warrant Committee, Rich Forte, James Stewart, Jeffrey Merrill, John Cohn, Kathy Gilbotti, and Brooks Gurnard. The other assistant moderator, Paul White, is in the cafeteria where he will be helping with votes and citizens who wish to be recognized during the evening. I would encourage everybody to please try to sit in this main hall rather than the cafeteria. There are plenty of seats still available up front here and also in the back rows. It will be easier for everybody to hear your comments if you're in this room. A few words on procedure and tradition of our town meeting. A handout circulated this evening summarizes the basic rules for town meeting, but let me emphasize a few key points. The guide that we use to conduct our town meeting is not Robert's Rules, but rather a volume called Town Meeting Time, compiled and updated by a committee of the Massachusetts Moderators Association. This volume and our traditions set forth numerous thou shalts and thou shalt nots, but much is left to local custom and to my discretion. Before each article, I will state the subject matter of the article and then recognize a person to make a motion of the article. The full text of each of these articles is printed in the Blue Book, and in most cases, the Warrant Committee has included a summary of their position on the article in the Blue Book. If you did not bring your Blue Book with you tonight, please raise your hand so that a page can bring you a copy of the Blue Book. We have several in the middle here. Can I have a page up front here to bring some blue books to the persons in the front?
I think they're working their way down.
Okay, they're working their way down. If you wish to discuss a motion During the course of our meeting, you must be recognized by the moderator before speaking. Please raise your hand and I will recognize you to speak. After you are recognized, please either proceed to a microphone or wait for a page to bring you a microphone. He's working his way on this side and he'll be right over. The power switch will be turned on for the microphone. It is important to remember that brevity is the soul of wit. I would like to remind all our speakers tonight that the longer and more complex your presentation, the greater the chance that you will confuse rather than persuade. We have a lot to cover tonight, so I'm going to limit motion presenters to 10 minutes and comments from the floor to 2 minutes. Please try to limit your remarks to new facts or new perspectives. Repeating what has already been said is unlikely to help your case and indeed may hurt if people are anxious to vote on the question. Limiting comments from the floor to 2 minutes will provide maximum opportunity for all who wish to speak to be heard. This is a fragile thing, our tradition of town meeting. Too many rules and it will become a game only lawyers can play. Too loose and it becomes anarchy. A further word about our conduct for tonight's meeting. Disagreement is the essence of democracy. It would be a very boring town meeting if we agreed about everything. But it is important that we disagree without being disagreeable. Let us honor the memory of all those who sacrificed to give us this great gift of democracy by conducting ourselves in a professional and collegial manner. Emotional outbursts or accusations directed towards individuals or groups have no place here and dishonor the memory of those who sacrificed to provide us this great gift of democracy. Before we proceed to the articles of the warrant, would you please join me in expressing our thanks to the scores of elected and appointed volunteers who comprise our town government, as well as the able employees who ensure the smooth running of the town. Thank you for your efforts. Okay. Thank you, Peg. Peg Crowley has asked that I make another announcement. There are still plenty of open seats here towards the front, so please come down and take some seats in the front. As I said, it's much better to be in this auditorium than in the cafeteria during the meeting. There are plenty of seats down here. Maybe people who are seated with empty seats next to them could raise their hand just so people will see. Thank you. Tonight, I would also like to especially remember Dover citizens who have contributed to Dover's governance and passed away since the last annual town meeting. Robert Comiskey, Dennis Dowd, Roger Marcus, Frank Ouellette, and Barbara Roth Schechter. We mourn the passing of these neighbors and are grateful for the difference they have made in the life of our town. As I mentioned, democracy is a wonderful prize that has been preserved through the sacrifice and effort of millions of our citizens. Let us take a moment to silently recognize those who are putting themselves in harm's way at this very moment in service of our country. A moment of silence, please. Thank you, and may God bless America. Before we begin tonight's proceedings, it is customary to recognize the chairman of the Warrant Committee for a few remarks. Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Rapetti. I'm Doug Lawrence, chair of the Warrant Committee. It's tradition that I kind of give a review of the year from the Warrant Committee's point of view and all the work we've done this year, and I will do so in the same spirit that Mr. Rapetti urged everyone do so. It has been busy. With that, I turn it over to James Stewart.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to take us through the budget, which is outlined in the Blue Book, and this is a presentation. I will probably end up going through this relatively quickly. It will be available on the website, but I'll cover all the salient points right here. Next slide. This year, for fiscal year 17, we're proposing total expenditures of $36,535,000, which is a decrease of about $36,000. Total revenues that we're projecting are $35,582,000, which is an increase of almost $985,000 versus fiscal year 16. And the use of free cash, we're projecting, as of now, prior to the meeting, of $953,412 versus $2.37 million last year, which is a decrease of about $1.4 million, or almost 60%. Next slide. The major changes from fiscal year 2016 in expenditures in Article 4, which is our operating budget, and Article 5 is our capital budget. The increases are in the schools. Overall, it's up. The schools are up by about $643,000, or 3.1%. The regional schools is about $500,000 of that, and Dover School, Chickering, as well as the special education out of district is in there, is about $200,000 over last year. Another big driver is group health insurance, which is in insurance and pensions, up about $200,000, and Norfolk County retirement up about $100,000, about 10% each of those. Decreases, the debt assessment from the regional school is down by about $40,000. The above amounts here that I've just outlined account for about $970,000 of the overall $1.2 million increase of the Article 4 budget, which explains about 82%. Next slide. For capital items and special articles, they're down versus last year. Article 5 is down $327,000, and the special articles is almost $700,000. Somebody from capital budget will be explaining that, I believe. And that these are the major changes. Next slide. This slide shows the overall components of the budget. The operating budget is about 90%, excluding the debt, of the total expenditures. Debt service is almost 6%, and the capital items and other items are the smaller numbers below 2%. Next slide. This slide shows the revenue sources and expenditures. It's found, a copy of this is found in the Blue Book, and it shows the sources and expenditures. Next slide. First, to start off with the sources, next slide. It outlines for fiscal year 17 the tax levy, the amount for using free cash to be used, the state aid that we get, the SBA reimbursements for this school, for Chickering, local receipts that are budgeted, as well as some other items. And again, this is in the Blue Book. Next slide. And on the expenditure side, next slide, this outlines the Article 4, 5 special articles, reserve fund, and prior year snow and ice deficit, and as it's all relatively self-explanatory with the changes. Next slide. This slide shows and a copy of this is in the Blue Book in its expanded form. This is Article 4 with the broad categories that the operating budget is being spent on: general government, on through health and sanitation, schools, and debt and interest. And it shows the big differences. Some of the big changes in terms of these classifications are they're sub $100,000 in most of the items, except for insurance and pensions, which is up over $300,000. On the school side, it does show almost $650,000 increase, or 3.1%. Next slide. And this shows the Article 4 spending by category. You can see that the schools are the lion's share. If you also the insurance and pension, lion's share of that is related, school related, and debt service, a good portion of that is school related. And then this outlines all of the other items. Next slide. This slide shows the history of these items in Article 4, and it compares previous year's increases, and you can see that the increases this year were regional schools largely, and highway is up a little bit, and insurance and pensions up over 9%. Next slide. On the estimated revenue side, the bulk of that comes from the tax levy, with a portion of that is for debt, local receipts, and new growth is about 1%. And the use of free cash this year, which we'll explain a little bit further, is about 2.6%. Next slide. And this shows a little bit of history, and most of the items here are flat to down, slightly up, but the tax levy is up. Next slide. We have our revenues and we have our expenditures, and to balance those, we have a gap which is plugged by the use of free cash. And as I said at the start of the meeting, we're estimating that to be about $953,000 at this point. Next slide. The use of free cash varies from year to year as a percentage of the expenses. This year, as it stands, we're projecting to use about 2.7%, which is a relatively low number compared to the amounts we've been using in previous years. The band typically is between 4 and 6% historically, but this is an amount that we're comfortable with at this point. Next slide. A little bit of history on free cash. This is just a history of the amount of free cash used. We have a balance which is certified in July, the beginning of the fiscal year, and then we encumber it. We've encumbered it at this meeting, so we have a net amount of free cash, and this just shows how much free cash we have over time. Next slide. Just a minute or two on trends, 2010 versus 17. What are the items? We seem to look at things on a year-by-year basis, but how have things been changing over the last 7-8 years? Next slide. And this is just a quick illustration, which is more meant for reference. But the tax levy has gone up from almost 23 million to 30, an increase of about 32%, which is a compound annual growth rate of 4%. Next slide. New growth, which is new growth of has been relatively consistent through the years. Over the last 8 years, the amount of first-year revenues that we get from new growth has been substantial, at over $3.1 million if you were to sum them all up, and that's more than 10% of the tax levy, which is interesting. Next slide. This shows Article 5 capital items, which bounces around. Some years it's higher, some years it's lower. Next slide. Special articles have come down somewhat. That depends on things. Last year there was some work at the Carroll Community Center, which caused it to be higher, and we had the police station as well. So just illustrative. Next slide. Total expenditures, you can see that this year it's leveling off a little bit. Next slide. Article 4 operating, which I've gone through. Next slide, please. Of the categories in Article 4, the general government. Next slide. Group health insurance, you can see that has been growing at an annual growth rate of 7.5% or 66% over that time period, or almost $1 million. Next. Workers' comp is small, but it's growing substantially, or has been growing substantially. Next slide. Medicare is also relatively small, but has been growing. Next slide. Norfolk County retirement has also been growing as well. Next. And so the insurance and pensions has been growing at a very fast, relatively fast rate of 7%. It's grown over $1.4 million in the last 8 years. Next. Schools total, again, this is just illustrative. Next. And the amount we spend on debt and interest has actually been going down as we pay down debt, and we refinance. Next slide. And the outstanding long-term debt has been declining till about $5.2 million in 2017. Next slide. This slide shows the long-term debt plus the short-term debt here in blue, and the short-term debt was for 46 Springdale, and so our total debt is now bumped up a little bit at this point, but it's illustrative. Next slide. And just for considerations for future years, there are factors relating to non-capital budgets. There's a teacher's contract that's coming up for negotiation. Student enrollments at Chickering and the region are greatly affect what we spend. Employee health insurance. On other post-employment benefits, OPEB, we, as a town, Dover, are funded better than most other towns, and we are funding it. The region has not yet funded their OPEB liabilities. Next slide. We also need to be mindful in future years of substantial capital maintenance, upgrades, and enhancements for the town and the region. The school buildings are now approaching 15-plus years old, and maintenance costs as systems age are expected to rise. For 2018 through 2027, just looking at the summary that the town or the various aspects of the town have put together, but not even including Dover's projection for our regular Article 5 items for the out years. It's almost $15 million of capital requirements for the next 11, 12 years, and it probably will be greater than that. Next slide. And that is it. Hopefully that was illustrative, and I don't think I took too much time, but thank you.
Thank you, James. It is now customary to call upon the chair of the Board of Selectmen, but before I do so, I would like to recognize Candace McCann and Robin Hunter.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we would like to thank Mr. Dolly, Jim Dolly right here. He is retiring from the Board of Selectmen this year, and we wanted to take this opportunity to thank him for everything that he's done for the town of Dover, for being a mentor to myself and Candace. Thank you, Jim, and we're going to miss you.
Thank you, Jim. And now I would like to turn it over to the chair of the Board of Selectmen for the customary selectmen comments. Mr. Dolly.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Candace and Robin, thank you very much. On behalf of the Board of Selectmen, I would like to express our sincere thank you to each member of all the boards and committees, elected or appointed. Your voluntary service and time commitment to various governing activities on behalf of the town of Dover is not only critical, but necessary for the successful functioning of the town. In addition, the dedication and work ethics of our town employees greatly contribute to the success of the town's operations. The Blue Book tonight contains 27 warrant articles, which at least 4 are planned to be dismissed. 2 of the more visible articles, number 17 regarding 46 Springdale Avenue, and number 18 regarding the MBTA lease negotiations, have earned the full support of the Board of Selectmen. In addition, due to the marvels of municipality governing, we have a special town meeting inserted between Articles 5 and 6 regarding Minuteman and the funding of the new campus. The board unanimously supports the request to fund the new campus. More to follow on each of these a little later. I urge our townspeople to either continue to participate, or if you haven't, step forward and volunteer your time to get involved in one of the many issues currently at hand by sharing your opinion. Lastly, as I have said, debate is a key component to our process in democracy. Civil dialogue during the debate shows respect, and the demonstrated civility eases the path that invites others to join the debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dowley. I would now like to recognize the Chair of the Warrant Committee, Douglas Lawrence, for a motion governing the conduct of the meeting. Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the following rule be adopted for conduct of this meeting. Any amendment to a main motion that would increase an appropriation must contain a provision for the source of funds for the increase, such that the total amount to be raised and appropriated at the meeting will not be increased.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mrs. Canny has seconded. Thank you. Now, we're going to be voting a little bit differently tonight because we have some people in the cafeteria. So I will be stating the vote here, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Havlin, the Assistant Town Moderator, who will be in communication with Paul White in the cafeteria to report what the vote was there, and we'll combine the two and I'll report the vote. Okay? So this is a majority vote. All in favor for the motion, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Carries unanimously in the main hall.
What's your vote out there?
You can tell we're very high-tech.
That's right. And I'm not sure they heard anything out there.
Okay.
So, hold on one second. Let me just make sure they're here.
So on to Article 1 now. This first article pertains to annual reports and is submitted by the Selectmen. Mr. Lawrence.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the reading of the various reports by the town clerk be waived and the reports be accepted and placed on file.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Mrs. Canny.
Second.
Mrs. Canny has seconded. This is a majority vote. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously in the main hall. Okay, and it was unanimous in the cafeteria. On to Article 2, to see if the town will vote pursuant to Chapter 44, Section 53E and 1/2 of the Mass General Laws to authorize the use of revolving fund accounts. Mr. Forte.
Mr. Moderator, I move that pursuant to the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53E and 1/2, the town authorize the use of revolving fund accounts for the following boards or departments, and that such accounts shall not exceed the amount set forth for the fiscal year 2017. Number 1, Building Department, Gas Inspector, $7,200. Plumbing Inspector, $17,500. Wiring Inspector, $25,500. Number 2, Board of Health, Perk and Deep Hole Inspection and Permitting, $40,000. Septic Inspection and Permitting, $50,000. Well Inspection and Permitting, $15,000. Swimming Pool Inspection and Permitting, $10,000. Number 3, Library, Materials Replacement, $5,000. Number 4, Council on Aging, Senior Activities and Transportation, $28,000. And further, that the fees charged for these services be credited to the respective accounts, and that the aforementioned boards or departments be authorized to make expenditures from the respective accounts and for the respective purposes up to the amount set forth above.
Thank you, sir. This is a majority, oh, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn. This is a majority vote. Is there any discussion or questions on the motion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously in the main hall. All right, and passed unanimously in the cafeteria. Thank you. Article 3, town salaries for elected officials. Mrs. Gernert.
Sorry. Mr. Moderator,
Yes, Mrs. Gernert.
I move that the salaries recommended for elected officials of the town as shown in the right-hand column of the warrant committee report be called over by the moderator, and that if no objection is raised to any of them, they be approved as read.
Thank you, Mrs. Gernert. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Gilbody. Again, the motion has been moved and seconded that I read the salaries on page 31 of the Blue Book for Article 3. If this motion passes, I will read the salaries and put on hold those items objected to, which we will then consider individually. All items that have not been objected to or for which a hold has not been made will be deemed to have been approved. Any questions on this motion? Again, this motion directs me to read the articles. Any salaries not objected to are deemed to have been approved. This is a majority vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously in the main hall. Also unanimous in the cafeteria. If you turn to page 31, you'll see at the bottom of the page, I'm sorry, at the top of the page, we have Article 3. I'm going to read fairly quickly. If you have a hold, either voice it while I'm reading, or I'll ask at the end of my reading so that you have a chance to voice any objections. Board of Selectmen, Chairman, $200. Clerk, $150. Other member, $100. Assessors, Chairman, $400. Other members each, $350. Town Clerk, $54,450. Planning Board, Chairman, $100. Other members each, $50. Constables, 3 each, $150. Board of Health, Chairman, $150. Other members, $100. I did not hear any objections, but does anybody wish to voice an objection now? Okay, let's ask, no objections in the main hall. Okay, no objections in the cafeteria. The salaries are deemed approved based on the motion that was approved. Article 4, salaries for town employees and expenditures by departments. Mr. Merrill.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the salaries and expenses recommended by the departments, officers, boards, and committees of the town, as shown in the fiscal year 2017 requested column in the Warrant Committee report, be called over by the moderator, and if no objection is made, that the town appropriate such sums and raise such amounts from the tax levy and from other general revenues of the town, except that $10,400 of that amount appropriated pursuant to line item 710 therein for maturing debt principal shall be transferred from the Title V receipt reserved for appropriation account.
Thank you, Mr. Merrill. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, sir. The motion has been made and seconded. This is just like the last article. If you approve this motion, I will read the budget items beginning on page 32 of the Blue Book for Article 4. If you have a question or objection, simply say hold as I read a particular line item, and we will go back to it at the end. Items for which a hold is not voiced will be deemed to have been approved. This is a majority vote. Any discussion on this motion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously in the main hall. Motion also carried in the cafeteria. I will now read the operating budget items beginning on page 32 of the Blue Book. Again, if you wish to ask a question or object, please say hold, and we will come back to those particular items. If there is no hold, then the item will be deemed to have been approved. Beginning on page 32, moderator, number 301, moderator, 0. You get what you pay for. 131, warrant committee, $7,680. 122, selectmen, total, $362,177. 192, townhouse expenses, $59,856. 191, Whiting Road, $4,734. 193, Carroll Community Center, $105,384. 199, building maintenance, total, $326,990. 129, copy postage, $30,400. 151, law, $200,000. 135, town accountant, total $199,160. 141, assessor, total $168,178. 145, treasurer collector, total $213,444. 155, data processing, total $136,503. 161, town clerk, total $65,635. 162, election registration, total $57,372. 175, planning board, total $63,739. 411, engineering, total $78,356. General government, total $2,079,608. Protection of persons and property, 201, police, total $1,968,220. 299, protective agency building, $88,675. 292, animal control, total $29,666. 220, fire, total $486,081. 231, ambulance, total $177,818. That's $177,818. 241, building inspector, total $108,189. 291, emergency management, total $3,460. 171, conservation commission, total $78,402. 176, board of appeals, total $3,993. 294, care of trees, total $97,751. 295, tree committee, $2,500. Health and sanitation, number 433, garbage disposal, $18,800. 439, solid waste, total $379,602. 450, town water, total $27,992. Number 519, board of health, total $78,749. I'm sorry, $78,794. Thank you. Highways and bridges, number 422, maintenance, total $749,245. 423, snow and ice, total $400,000. 424, street lighting, $12,489. Number 425, town garage, $82,415. Number 428, Tarvia patching, $261,900. Other public agencies, number 194, emergency coordinator, 0. Number 491, cemetery, total $113,073. Number 541, council on aging, total $138,099. Number 610, library, total $601,907. Number 650, Parks and Recreation, total $416,030. Unclassified services, number 152, Personnel Committee, 0. Number 178, Dover Housing Partnership, 0. 195, Town Report, $11,509. 543, Veterans, $6,000. 691, Historic Commission, $1,250. Memorial Day, $3,000. Insurance, number 912, workers' compensation, $77,532. Number 914, group insurance, $2,284,408. Number 916, Medicare FICA, $169,505. Number 950, other insurance, $179,067. Pensions, number 911, Norfolk County Retirement, $1,129,266. Schools, number 600, Dover School Operating, $9,915,962. Number 601, Dover Share Regional Operating Assessment, Debt Assessment Total, $11,324,793. Number 602, Minuteman Vocational, $75,016. Number 604, Norfolk County Agricultural High School, $6,000. Maturing debt and interest. Number 710, maturing debt principal, $1,125,400. Number 751, maturing debt interest, $281,550. Number 759, bank charges, $4,000. No objections or holds were heard. Does anybody wish to state a hold or objection now? None have been heard in the main hall. Check the cafeteria. Okay, the report is no holds in the cafeteria, so the motion is passed. On to Article 5, capital budget. Mr. Stewart.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the following sums recommended for the various capital purposes be called over by the moderator, and, if no objection is made, that the town raise and appropriate such sums unless funding sources noted, and that any sums realized from the trade-in or auction of old equipment shall be used to reduce the cost of acquisition of new equipment or to purchase related accessories.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Do I hear a second?
Second.
This motion has been seconded by Mr. Lawrence. Like the prior motion, this one directs me to read over the capital budget items to see if anyone objects to a specific item. If you have a question or objection, simply say hold as I read through the particular line items, and we will go back to it at the end. Items for which no hold is voiced will be deemed to have been approved. Is there any discussion on this motion that directs me to read the capital budget items? No discussion. This is a majority vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously in the main hall.
Unanimous?
Motion also carries unanimously in the cafeteria. Now, if you turn to page 42 of the Blue Book, you'll see the beginning of the capital budget. Number 1, Cemetery Commission, truck with plow, $55,000. Number 2, Fire and Ambulance, radio equipment ambulance, $14,000. B, radio equipment fire, $28,000. 3, Highway Department, slide-in sander, $23,975. Park and Recreation Commission, large tractor mower, $40,000. B, paving Chickering Field driveway, $11,000. 5, Police Department, patrol vehicles, $36,500. B, replace tower at Grossman Camp, $33,500. 6, School Committee, air conditioning update, parents IT server room, 2 units, closed parents, $17,000. B, aerial man lift, $8,900. C, technology hardware, $19,400. 7, Board of Selectmen A, protective agencies building, kitchen renovation, $15,000. B, protective agencies building, painting and apparatus ceiling, $20,000. C, Carroll Community Center, repair, replace stairway outside of cafeteria, $0.
Hold.
So hold on 7C, Carroll Community Center. D, library, outside handrail on sidewalk, $15,000. E, townhouse, replace metered mail machine, $7,500. 8, town clerk, voting machine, $8,000. There's been a hold expressed with respect to 7C, the Carroll Community Center. Are there any other holds?
Got a hold up there? Paul, any holds?
Okay, no holds in the cafeteria. So we will be dealing with 7C. Mr. Stewart, could I have a motion with respect to 7C?
Mr. Moderator, I move that $0 be raised and appropriated for item 7C, and that any sums realized from the trade-in or auction of old equipment be used to reduce the cost of acquisition of new equipment or to purchase related accessories.
Okay, second?
Second.
Mr. Lawrence has seconded. Okay, discussion.
Mr. Moderator, it is both the opinion of the Board of Selectmen and a majority of the capital budget that we do move to repair the stairwell going into the cafeteria of the Carroll School. At this point in time, the stairwell is deteriorating. It is the opinion of our experts that we repair the deterioration by closing that exit. It is one of 3 exits. It does not present any hazards to any of the people using the Carroll School. And we would like the town to think about having that replaced, because right now it is a safety hazard to people using that building. We also have some slides that show the deterioration, if you think it would be helpful. I don't know, do I make a motion to amend it? Right. Can you put it in writing?
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Yep, Mr. Ramsey is going to speak to these slides. Just give him a moment. Mr. Ramsey's going to give it to him.
So you want to start the slideshow?
Is this the driveway, Bill? You're going to have to trust me on this, folks. That is supposed to show a depression in the driveway adjacent to the stairway, and it's actually a deflection under, so the surface is starting to deflect, and we believe into the stone wall that you'll see. I hope you'll see better than this in the next slide. The next slide, Bill. That's actually the deteriorating stairway, and it's hard to see, but they're actually crumbling, and the patchwork that was previously done is failing at that stairway. Next slide, Bill. Oof. Is that the crumbling wall, the retaining wall? My apologies for the way these slides do not project very well onto the screen. Is that the stairs? Okay. So the previous slide was the wall. You want to bring back that previous slide, Bill? Yeah, that shows the crumbling wall to the right of that slide. The fieldstone in that wall is actually falling out onto the stairway. And I don't know if you can actually see, there's an unsupported railing there that's sort of suspended on one post that's rotted through. I think that's it. Okay, thank you, Bill.
Dave, you need to identify free cash, because they're expecting it to come out of there. Otherwise, you have to identify the source.
It's actually not coming
What's it coming out?
out. That's what the motion calls for?
But no, the motion was 0. Well,
Yeah, I know.
okay, I see.
But by adding the 9,000,
Okay.
free cash.
Well, while we're trying to figure out how to amend the motion, unfortunately, the slides once projected did not do justice, but we do want to emphasize that, our concern about not repairing this is a safety concern. The stairwell is crumbling, the railing is falling down, and a lot of people do use that facility. So with that in mind, I am going to, wow, I thought I wrote small. I am going to amend the motion. I move that the motion be amended by deleting the sum of zero and replacing it with the sum of $90,000.
Okay, there has been a motion to amend the motion with respect to the stairwell to increase the amount above zero expenditures. Do I hear a second?
Mr. Moderator,
Yes?
I believe you, Bonnie Akins, Greystone Road, I believe you have to show where the money is coming from.
This is a motion to appropriate.
And it will raise the total amount to be raised.
Mr. Ramsey, we were discussing that. Do you care to comment?
That is correct. It will increase the amount to be raised and appropriated to what was calculated and shown on slides earlier. The $90,000 will, in fact, increase the amount of taxation, and that's been shown in the earlier slides. If this number were not to be inserted, this $90,000, then the amount of free cash to be used at the end of the meeting would be reduced.
Okay, Mrs. Aiken?
I understand what he said, but I think it's an unusual way to go about it.
Okay, well, objection noted to the methodology. And that's a good segue to the discussion of the motion. Does anybody else have any comments or discussion on this motion? Mr. Cohn?
That you repeat the amendment because a lot of us didn't hear it.
Okay. Let me repeat the amendment so that everybody will know. The motion was made to amend the motion with respect to zero amount for the stairwell by deleting the word zero and replacing it with the sum of $90,000. So the motion will be increasing the amount of the expenditure from zero to $90,000.
Source?
We already talked about that. I'm sorry? Could you wait till the microphone comes to you, please?
The $90,000, does that, have there been competitive bids solicited?
I'm sorry, sir, could you state your name, please?
Yeah, my name is Fred Lane.
Okay.
And my question is, where does the amount $90,000 come from?
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Mr. Ramsey?
This is based on an estimate prepared by a... This is an estimate prepared by a professional architect, which includes an estimated cost of construction as well as the design services that would be involved in preparing this and getting it out to bid. It is a budget estimate. The construction portion is about $60,000 in the estimate, and then there is the soft cost for the design and construction oversight that go with it.
Any other questions? Gentleman in the middle here.
Mr. Moderator, Jim McLaughlin. I just question, you're saying remove this stairwell, fill it in, and put a window in for $90,000. Is that my understanding of this motion, of this article?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
My understanding of this article is that you want $90,000 to dig a hole, fill it in, and put a window in. Is that correct?
Mr. Ramsey?
It's more, it is more complicated than that. And it also includes excavation to determine the source of moisture that's penetrating into the building in two separate locations. It's a lot more difficult than just filling in a hole.
I'm sorry, there's nothing in the article talking about moisture penetration or anything else. You're saying excavate the staircase, demolition, fill it in, put in a window.
Any further comment, Mr. Ramsey? No? Okay, any further discussion? Yes.
Kristen Dennison, 36 Springdale Avenue. This is the old cafeteria in the community center. Where is the second exit, the second interior exit in that room? I know there's one large exit, but if you get rid of the door to the outside, where is that second exit for safety purposes?
There is one exit that goes right to the corridor.
Yep.
And then there's a second exit that currently is not used as an exit into the blue room of the COA. And that doorway would be modified so that it could in fact be used as an emergency exit, in which case people would exit through the blue room out onto grade at a door in the blue room.
Is that part of the $9,000?
Yes, it is.
Okay, Mr. Cohn.
The Ward Committee unanimously recommends not approving this request, and I'd just like to very quickly read the dissenting piece that's actually in your blue book, but the dissenting members have 3 objections: safety, cost, and timing. 1, safety. The proposal to wall up an exterior exit door to a large activity room, while technically compliant with the fire code, would funnel people back into the interior of the building rather than safely outside. 2, cost. $90,000 seems excessive for a project involving a doorway and small stairwell. Last year, the town approved $650,000 to refurbish 4 bathrooms at the Carroll Community Center. Projections for next year indicate $1.8 million to replace the Carroll Community Center boilers and controllers. To have this $90,000 request in addition is troubling, as is the concern that this work may be overpriced. 3, timing. The committee learned that the funding committed to the Carroll Community Center in recent years may trigger legal requirements that the town spend additional funds to make the Carroll Community Center compliant with the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, and that an ADA compliance study has been authorized by the Board of Selectmen. We feel it would be wise to wait until we better understand these requirements and costs and to factor that information into the overall Carroll Community Center plan before proceeding with this project. This stairwell can be patched until the town has more complete information to ensure efficient spending to minimize costs while ensuring safety and compliance with the ADA standard.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn. Before we have any further discussion, I want to make sure that there was a second for this motion. A second for the amendment to the motion. Do I hear a second? Mr. Dahlia seconded. Any further discussion on this amendment to the motion? Again, the amendment would increase the expenditure for the stairwell from $0 to $90,000.
Jim, we have someone who would like to be recognized outside.
Okay. There is somebody from the cafeteria who wishes to be heard. Could you ask them to come up to the front?
Mr. Moderator,
Okay. Sir.
Maxwell Morton, Sterling Drive. It appears to me that, A, we have not been fully informed of all of the things that are going to be done in this. 2, there are subsequent studies which may require additional work to be done. 3rd, it seems as if there is an opportunity for an interim fix. 4th, I don't understand why we could not have the architect study done for a small amount, relatively small amount of money, at least according to all my architect friends who feel underpaid, and actually get bids so we know what we're talking about and all of the things are included. I gather from what has been said that a temporary fix can be placed. And so my suggestion would be that we do this and do it in the right way, because we're dealing with a great many young people as well as us old codgers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Please hold your applause. You'll be able to express your views when we vote, and applause just wastes time. Thank you. Okay. Any other discussion on this amendment? Okay, this is a majority vote on the amendment. We'll vote on the amendment first, and then we'll go back to the main motion. So the amendment is to increase the expenditure from $0 to $90,000. Majority vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion to amend does not carry in the main hall. It was also voted no in the cafeteria. We now return to the main motion, which because there was a hold, we had a separate motion made that $0 be expended on the stairwell. We will now vote on that main motion. Any further discussion? This is a majority vote. All in favor of the main motion, $0 expenditure, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion carried.
Okay, motion also carried in the cafeteria. Thank you. Okay, we are now going to move from an annual town meeting to a special town meeting to consider a bonding issue for Minuteman. Mr. Lawrence.
Mr. Moderator, I move to suspend the annual town meeting until the special town meeting is recessed or dissolved.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Canny. This is a majority vote to suspend the annual town meeting and begin the special town meeting, which will be dealing with the bond issuance for the Minuteman School. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously in the main hall.
Unanimous out there?
Motion also carried in the cafeteria. I now call the special meeting to order. A quorum is present. Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town approve $144,922. Pardon me. Mr. Moderator, I move that the town approve $144,922,478 borrowing authorized by the Minuteman Regional Vocational Technical School District, the district, on March 15, 2016, for the purpose of paying the cost of designing, constructing, and originally equipping a new school district to be located at 758 Merritt Road, Lexington, Massachusetts, and for the payment of all other costs incidental and related thereto, the project, which school facility shall have an anticipated useful life as an educational facility for the instruction of school children of at least 50 years, and for which the district may be eligible for a school construction grant from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, MSBA, said amount to be expended at the direction of the School Building Committee. The MSBA's grant program is a non-entitlement discretionary program based on need as determined by the MSBA, and any project costs the district incurs in excess of any grant approved by and received from the MSBA shall be the sole responsibility of the district and its member municipalities. Any grant that the district may receive from the MSBA for the project shall not exceed the lesser of 1, 44.75%, 44.75% of eligible approved project costs as determined by the MSBA, or 2, the total maximum grant amount determined by the MSBA, and the amount of borrowing authorized shall be reduced by any grant amount set forth in the project funding agreement that may be executed between the district and the MSBA. Any approval of this borrowing shall be contingent upon the approval on or before March 1st, 2016, of the 2016 amended regional agreement for the district by the town meetings of all 16 member towns of the district.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Do I hear a second?
Second.
The motion has been seconded by Mrs. Canny. I will now turn to Mr. Spalding, who's our representative to the Minuteman Vocational Technical School District. Mr. Spalding.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Can you hear me?
Tap it first to see.
There you go. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I am Ford Spalding of 5 Hutton Road, Dover, and Dover's representative to the Minuteman School Committee. Minuteman Vocational Career and Technical High School is part of Dover's educational family of opportunities for our town students. On February 22nd, at the special town meeting, Dover reaffirmed its commitment to Minuteman for our students by continuing its membership in the Minuteman District. Minuteman offers an academic curriculum similar to that of Dover-Sherburne and with the same graduation requirements, including 100% of our students pass the Commonwealth's MCAS exams. In addition, Minuteman will offer, under an academy education model, 16 comprehensive career and technical programs, including courses like advanced manufacturing, multimedia engineering, robotic engineering, environmental science, culinary, horticultural, health occupations, and of course courses in the building trades. In order to graduate, students must also receive certification in their program of interest. Approximately 65% of our students go on to college, with the remainder into the military or employment. This picture, the next picture you'll see, is a picture of our current building. The original impetus for Minuteman's building project was that our 45-year-old existing building was in need of $106 million of repair and updates to meet current ADA and safety building code requirements for schools, replacement of our roof, installation of a sprinkler system throughout the building, abatement of asbestos, modification of structural framing and masonry, window replacement, and much, much more. This, in spite of the district spending in the last 7 years, $7 million just on maintenance items. The Massachusetts School Building Authority, MSBA, told us that they would not participate in a renovation or repair program when they approved our new building project. They have committed $44.1 million of state funding to the district for Minuteman for the new building. Prior to MSBA making its decision for a new building, they had us, during the feasibility module, which took about 1.5 years, to look at repair only, renovation only, renovation and new, and just new. The district and the MSBA determined that a new building was the least costly and most advantageous solution. This evening, we are asking your support for Minuteman's new $144.9 million building project, which is scheduled to be completed by September 2020. In partnership with the approval of the MSBA, the new building will incorporate a new career academy education program. Career and academic education will be coordinated and integrated so that students will be able to apply their academics to their trade. And trades will be coordinated in adjacent spaces so that students can collaborate on project-based learning. The educational design can only be effectively incorporated in a new building. The following slides are examples of the new educational spaces incorporated in the design created by our architects, Castle Booz Associates, with the assistance of our project manager, Skanska USA, the Minuteman Administration, and Building Committee. And we can go quickly through this, but this shows what the trades hall would be. If you can just, Bill, just go right through. One thing you do see is you see windows. In our current building, most of the classrooms, there are no windows. Some have said, why is Minuteman building so expensive? We just did our elementary school and our high school, and the cost was much less expensive. There are many factors that go into a career and technical school. Minuteman is 2 schools and 2 educational programs in the same building. Vocational schools require larger, more complex, and distinctive educational space than just traditional classrooms. Some spaces must include proper ventilation and waste disposal systems. And the MSBA reimbursement rate, believe it or not, is the same for an elementary school, a regional school, or a vocational school. When we look at the costs, the new school costs, this is what we're using for assumptions. We're using a 10-member towns in the district, which is what we currently have after the regional agreement was approved. A 30-year bond issue, enrollment projections for FY20 of 458 in-district students and 170 out-of-district students. The out-of-district capital fee, which we can now levy based on a regulation from the Department of Education, will be approximately $8,400 per student. And Dover has averaged, in the last 15 years, in attendance at the school, 2 students each year. If you go to the next slide, this shows the impact of what we assume would be the impact in 2020. Projected annual debt assessment would be $76,324. Projected annual operating assessment, $34,233, for a total assessment of $110,557. That's a cost per student of $55,279. Estimated capital debt assessment on a medium home in Dover would be $30.48 annually. You need to know that these numbers change annually, and they change annually based on the number of students that Dover sends, but also the number of students the rest of the different districts spend. So they're basically based on the estimates we have now. I think this is a very important slide because what it looks at is what new construction would be and what if we did a non-MSB renovation plan. Some people say, well, let's just take our building that was built 45 years ago for over 1,000 students and let's reconfigure that down to a lower enrollment. We're looking at 628 students in the new building. If you look at the new construction, the MSBA is giving us an effective rate of 30.46% reimbursement. If we don't go through an MSBA plan, the district pays 100%. The cost would be $100 million, our net cost for the new building. Plus, we receive a capital fee for any out-of-district students, so that would be reduced. The cost for a repair program is we estimate is $106 million, and there'd be no capital fee. Construction would be 2.5 years. Construction in a renovation project would be up to 10 years. What's important about that 10-year, and we talked about it earlier when you talked about the Carroll School, is if you do repairs to a building over a 3-year period, roughly a 3-year period, 25% of the assessed value, our assessed value is $25 million, then you have to bring the entire building up to code, ADA compliant, fire code, et cetera. So that would speed along the renovation repair project. There'd be no displacement of students for new construction. Obviously, there'd be continual displacement over a period of time. And not to exceed cost, we are capped at $144.9 million. We cannot go any higher. Under a renovation project, who knows? It's the right size building for what we're doing. The current building, as I said, was built for over 1,000 students. Controlled operating costs will result from a smaller, more efficient building. That will not be true of a building that was designed in the late 1960s and built in the early 1970s. We believe that with a new building, we're going to be able to attract a couple of new towns or even cities into the district, and we're already in negotiations with them. But that will only happen. It will only happen with a new building. New programs in a modern building. Building is not designed for the academies. There's certainty for students and parents. We hear that a lot for students, parents that want to send their students to Minuteman. If you not do a new building, what's the building going to be able to do for our children? And it's one vote at town meeting. That will be this town meeting, and be ongoing votes if we did a non-MSBA renovation project. As of right now, we have 5 communities that have voted to move ahead with this project. This evening, we have 5 communities voting on this project. And then until May 9th, the rest of the communities will be voting. We ask your support for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spalding. This will be a majority vote. Any discussion, questions? Yes, Mr. Crowley. Please wait for the microphone, sir.
Tom Crowley, Cedar Hill Road. Can you give us the cumulative number that Dover will be responsible for over the life of the loan, which I think is going to be 25 or 30 years?
Yes, sir.
Is it a couple of $1 million, or $2 million, $1 million? What's the number?
Let me direct that question to Mr. Spalding. Sir?
Mr. Crowley, it'd be about $1 million.
About $1 million. You don't have an exact number?
As I said earlier, it all depends on the enrollment that we have over the 30 years, the enrollment for the other communities, and if we bring in other communities. Our estimate now is about $1 million.
All right, we're going to have, it's going to be $1 million at least. We have 2 students on average. This is ridiculous. We've got to come to a conclusion on this thing. I've heard of other towns may turn it down over the next few weeks. May or may not happen, but we should start now to get rid of this and vote no. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Crowley. Somebody from the cafeteria. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Rich of 6 Meeting House Hill Road. I'm like a Segated. This is my first time speaking in town meeting, even though I've been here as a resident for 17 years. In high school, I was on the State Student Advisory Board to the State Board of Education, studying laws, how they affect. We were the only state in the country that had a student as a full voting member of the State Board of Education. I've kept myself appraised of the kinds of materials and courses and curriculum that's being taught at Minuteman. It's actually much more likely that Dover's future engineers and robotic specialists would come from a school like Minuteman than from our own school even. I think honestly part of the reason why we've had so few students attending all these years is that we might be somewhat, I don't know how to say this properly without offending anyone, we might be somewhat dissuaded by the name Minuteman Voc Tech. They are doing cutting edge work in many projects and in many their curriculum is very challenging to their students, and there are many other students that graduate and go on to places like MIT. So you do need to know that it's not just people, and by the way, when was the last time you complained about spending $200 on a plumber some afternoon, on a weekend? There's nothing wrong with trade education, and there's nothing wrong with the education that is more pragmatic. That's why Northeastern received more applications than any other school, because they had co-ops. The students that will graduate will have direct experience in the fields of their choosing. To relinquish this now, Jim, Mr. Moderator, what was the percent of our budget that was actually go towards Minuteman? It was a
Mr.
very
Spalding, would you answer
Mr.
that question?
Spalding knows it.
And Ms. Rich, I would remind you, your remarks are limited to 2 minutes. Thank you.
Okay.
The 1/2 of 1%.
One last thing. If we choose to leave, we will only be able to come back as outside communities, and there might not be spots available for us then. Think this through. It's not that much money. Don't be penny wise and pound foolish.
Thank you, Ms. Rich. You'll have a chance to vote. Any further questions or discussion? Gentleman in the back.
This is Fred Lane. I live on Farm Street, and I've been a resident of the town for 9 years. I am personally very sympathetic to the concept of vocational education. I think it's a great idea. I thought this woman's comments were particularly relevant on the value. However, I think we have to look at the realistic demographics of this town and the fact that we have had at maximum 4 people attend in any 1 year. We've had years where there have been 0. And for us to bear, I think, the proportionate burden on such a small population is not reasonable. I think it's an excessive burden. The idea that this is a small tax burden for the median house is an interesting statistic, but not particularly relevant in my view. So my own view is that $55,000 a student, there might be other ways to do this. There might be private funding. There might be a scholarship fund available. I'm happy to talk to people about this personally, because I'm a big believer in education. But I don't believe that the townsfolk here should be paying this burden. I think it's excessive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. Any further discussion, questions, comments? Lady in the middle.
Hi, I'm Wendy Parker on Greystone Road. Just a quick question, just so I understand. If we're not part of the Minuteman system, can one of our students from Dover still attend there?
Very good question. Mr. Spalding?
Yes, under Chapter 74, if a student wants to attend a career and technical school, the answer is we as a town have to pay for it, and they have every right to do that. However, the school has to have room. So if the school has room, then the student can go there, and there's an admissions process. In addition, it's not only if they can go to the school, it's to get into their, let's call it the trade that they're interested in. If it's biotechnology and there's no room because in-district students are there, then there's no room for the student to go there.
Hold it, Mr. Crowley. Do you have another question, ma'am? Wait for the microphone, please.
So what would be the cost to either the town or the student if we're not a member?
The cost is, first of all, the tuition is set by the Commissioner of Education. Secondly, there would be transportation costs that the out-of-district student would have to, the town would have to pay. Third, if a student is an IEP SPED, be about another $4,500 cost. So the cost is roughly the same.
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just want to clarify what this vote is and what it is not. At the February special town meeting, Dover voted to remain in district in Minuteman, and it will remain in district regardless of whether or not we choose to fund the new school tonight. This vote is limited to whether or not Dover approves funding of the new school.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. There was a hand here.
Yeah, Art Meehan, 5 Fox Run. I just want to say that I'd like to look to the future, not the past, and I don't think we can predict how many kids in Dover may or may not want to go going forward, and I recommend that we vote for the future.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Crowley?
There are alternatives to this proposal. We have one student attending Norfolk Aggie. The cost is $6,000. There are 2 or 3 other schools of this type. They all take out-of-district students. Now, whether you do have to apply, and there is a test, but our students more than likely would be able to qualify for Framingham, Tri-County, Norfolk Aggie. There's 3 of them available. And I don't think that issue has been explored by the warrant committee or anybody else. And it's time for us to do that and avoid this big expenditure.
Thank you, Mr. Crowley. Mrs. Hunter?
Yes, I wanted to reiterate to everyone that at the special town meeting in February, we did discuss all of these issues. This subject was very well vetted. We did call other schools to determine whether or not there would be availability for our students in those schools. Many of the schools that you have mentioned, Mr. Crowley, have waiting lists, and there were no guarantees that our students would be able or would be accepted to those programs. With respect to Norfolk Aggie, that is an agricultural program and veterinary program. Minuteman does not have those programs, but does have other programs. When a student applies to a technical school, they're applying to a specific program. Under Mass General Law, it is the responsibility of the town of Dover to pay for that student to attend the program. The cost here of $43,000, primarily a fixed cost for capital based upon the allocation of the regional agreement, is a cost that we bear if no students go or select a technical education. However, only twice in the last 20 years have no students in Dover attended such a program. And again, it is our responsibility as a town to provide that program. And based upon our research, Minuteman was the best fit for this community.
Thank you, Ms. Hunter. Anybody else? Mr. Crowley? I'm sorry, I can't see. Jerry, Mr. Clark, sorry. The lights are difficult here.
I understand, Jim. Jerry Clark, Valley Road. I think there's a misunderstanding on the part of some of the individuals attending. I'll put it very short. The horse is out of the barn. The February special town meeting was the time to make a decision, yay or nay, on committing to stay in Minuteman. The vote at that time was a commitment to stay in Minuteman. These two articles do not, under any circumstances, voted either way, result in the town not participating in and being a member of Minuteman. There seems to be some confusion over that. I would recommend that the moderator recommend that Article 1 be dismissed, as it is advisory and of no actual power, and simply explain that Article 2 is the question of whether or not, according to Mr. Spalding's presentation, the town goes along with the concept of a new school at the costs he has provided, or disapproves with the result that, lacking a unanimous support of all towns in the district, the district would have to go to the maintenance mode. Have I stated it clearly?
One slight addition, Mr. Clark. Actually, we have to vote on Article 1. If Article 1 is approved, then we would dismiss Article 2. If Article 1 is not approved because of a legal nicety, we would then have to move to Article 2.
But as to the matter of all of this discussion of where the students should or shouldn't go, as I say, the horse is out of the barn.
That's, Mr. Crowley, did you have any additional comments? And then I'd like to move to a vote if we could.
What's going on here is not all the towns have approved this at this point. The issue is, do we give them the money? It's a tremendous amount of money for 2 kids a year. We believe in good education in this town. We have the best education in the state. We want the best for these 2 kids. They have alternatives. Perhaps some of them might eventually stay in Dover-Sherburne. Let's get on with this thing and just vote against it and not give them the money. If you don't give them the money, we're out of the deal. Thank you.
There's one more hand back in the far corner there.
Thank you. Tom here, Park Avenue. I come to you today as a proud parent of a Minuteman graduate. As good as the Dover schools are, they would have been an absolute disaster for my son.
Please hold your applause. Thank you.
And so I want to thank you for your support of Minuteman over the years. And we pride ourselves here in Dover at providing the absolute best education for all of our children, all of our kids. And DS just simply isn't the right place for everyone. And we really owe it to those 2 kids every year that take it upon themselves to step out and do something different. It is a lot of money. It is a lot of money. We spend a lot of money on our schools, on our kids, on every one of our children, and this does seem disproportionately large. However, the travesty here is that we only send 2 kids every year. What we should be doing is looking to the future and sending more and promoting it better. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I would like to move to a vote now. This is a majority vote. All in favor of the motion, which would be approving the borrowing, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? No. The ayes have it in the main hall. Motion also carries in the cafeteria. Having approved Article 1 of the special town meeting, we now move to Article 2 and to a dismissal. Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that this article be dismissed.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Canny. Motion has been made that Article 2 be dismissed. This is also a majority vote. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Motion also carried in the cafeteria. Okay, we have now finished with the business for the special town meeting, so I will consider a motion that the special town meeting be dissolved. Mr. Lawrence,
Mr. Moderator, I move that this special town meeting be dissolved.
do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. The motion has been made to dissolve the special town meeting. Mrs. Canny has seconded. This is a majority vote. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously in the main hallway.
And out there. Unanimous.
Also carry unanimously in the cafeteria. Special town meeting is officially dissolved. I now call the annual town meeting back to order. Only a lawyer could love this. Okay, Article 6, the Unemployment Compensation Fund. Mrs. Canny.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 for the purpose of funding an unemployment compensation fund as authorized by Chapter 40, Section 5E of the Massachusetts General Laws.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Forte. Any discussion on this motion? It's a majority vote. No hands being raised. A majority vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries unanimously in the main hall.
Are you unanimous? Unanimous.
Also carries unanimously in the cafeteria. Article 7, accumulated sick leave. Mr. Cohn.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 for the purpose of payment of accumulated sick leave for retired police officers as authorized by Chapter 375 of the Acts of 1984.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mrs. Gurnett has seconded. This is a majority vote. Any discussion on this motion? No hands being raised. Majority vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously in the main hall.
Are you unanimous? Yes, unanimous.
Also carries unanimously in the cafeteria. Article 8, highway construction. Mrs. Gilbody.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into contracts, apply for, accept, expend, and borrow in anticipation of any funds allotted by the Commonwealth for the construction, reconstruction, and other improvements of town roads and related infrastructure.
Thank you, Mrs. Gilbody. Do I hear a second?
Mr. Moderator, I second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Merrill. This is also a majority vote. Any discussion on this motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously in the main hall.
Are you unanimous? Majority.
Motion carried by majority in the cafeteria. Article 9, Council on Aging. Mrs. Gilbody.
Mr. Moderator, I move to amend the rotation of the full three-year members of the Council on Aging in Article 26 in Chapter 4 of the Town of Dover General Bylaws by changing the rotation as follows. 1, Article 26, parentheses, Council on Aging, end parens. In Chapter 4-36, delete, quote, 3 or 4 members each year, end quote, and replace with, quote, 2 or 3 members each year, end quote. Number 2, and further, that non-substantive changes in the numbering of this bylaw be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the Dover Town Code.
Thank you, Mrs. Gilbody. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart, who has made the second. Is there any discussion on this motion? Okay, this is a majority vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Are you unanimous?
In the main hall.
Majority.
Also passed in the cafeteria. Thank you. Article 10. This is a citizen's petition with respect to the acceptance of Hawthorne Lane and Clover Circle. And I understand that the citizens who filed this petition have agreed to a dismissal. Okay, okay. Mr. Lawrence, do you care to make the motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move that this article be dismissed.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Canny has seconded. This will be a motion to dismiss Article 10. This is a majority vote. Any questions or discussion? All in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously in the main hall.
Are you unanimous? Unanimous.
Carries unanimously in the cafeteria also. Article 11, Conservation Commission. Mr. Forte.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 for the Conservation Fund to be used by the Conservation Commission for any purpose authorized by Chapter 40, Section 8C of the Massachusetts General Laws.
Thank you, Mr. Forte. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn, who has made the second. Is there any discussion on this motion dealing with the Conservation Commission? This is a majority vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously in the main hall.
Are you unanimous? Unanimous.
Also carries unanimously in the cafeteria. Article 12, Capital Equipment and Improvements for the Dover-Sherburne Regional School. Mrs. Gernert.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town appropriate the sum of $160,692,000 by transfer from free cash to be expended by the Dover-Sherburne Regional School Committee pursuant to an intergovernmental agreement entered into by the town of Dover on February 4th, 2016 with the Dover-Sherburne Regional School District and the town of Sherburne for the purpose of paying Dover's allocated costs of the following capital equipment and improvements: controls panels, $9,018, anoxic media tank mixers, $8,400, elevator system, $17,600, carpeting in the high school library, $40,000, passenger van, $40,000, exterior doors, $7,500, fieldhouse interior painting, $22,500, exterior ceiling soffits, $9,400, floor scrubbers, $26,500, leaf collection vacuum blowers, $10,900, exterior walls brick masonry, $23,000, fire alarm panels, $57,800, maintenance building feasibility study, $15,000, for a total of $287,618, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto.
Thank you, Mrs. Gernert. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Gilbody, who has made a second. Any discussion on this motion? This is a majority vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously in the main hall.
Are you unanimous? Yes, unanimous.
Also unanimous in the cafeteria. Thank you. Article 13, borrowing for capital equipment and improvements for the Dover-Sherburne Regional School. Mr. Merrill.
Mr. Moderator, I move that this article be dismissed.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, sir. Was that John?
Rich.
Oh, Rich Forte made a second. Thank you, Richard. This is a majority vote to dismiss the article. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously in the main hall.
Unanimous? Yes, unanimous.
Okay, thank you. It was unanimous in the cafeteria. Article 14, Stretch Energy Code. Mr. Stewart.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to adopt Chapter 119 of the Town of Dover General Bylaws entitled Stretch Energy Code for the purpose of regulating the design and construction of buildings for the effective use of energy pursuant to Appendix 115.AA of the Massachusetts Building Code 780 CMR, the Stretch Energy Code, including future additions, amendments, or modifications thereto, and as shown on a document on file in the office of the town clerk, and further, that non-substantive changes in the numbering of this bylaw be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the Dover Town Code.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Forte. Any discussion on this issue? Mr. Donahue?
You all hear me up and back? Approximately a year ago, the Selectmen asked the Long Range Planning Committee and the Planning Board to evaluate this so-called Green Community Certification Program. I'm Jack Donahue, Chairman of the Long Range Planning Committee. We've been looking into it for over a year, and the results are all positive, very, very positive. What this comes down to is working towards energy conservation, and as a result, we'll be receiving grant funding from the Commonwealth of Mass. The slide's up. As you can see, it's administered by the Mass Department of Energy. It will result in substantial grants for energy efficiency projects. So far, 155 to 160 cities and towns have already adopted it or certified. Sherburne was certified in 2011. They've received over $200,000 of this grant money. It's particularly important to note that in Sherburne, their town planner, Gino Carlucci, is also our town planner. So we have a great resource with Gino to work with him. He's helped us over the last year evaluate this, and he'll help us implement it in the future. To do this, to become designated a green certification community, we really just have two steps to take. Next slide, please. The first step is to adopt the so-called Stretch Building Code. This is simply an appendix to the State Building Code. It's a more modern, cost-efficient route towards energy efficiency. It's performance-based, and it's not significantly stricter than the current base code. I've talked with the building inspector of Dover very thoroughly, both the current and past building inspector of Sherburne, where it's been working for over 5 years, and he's had no problem with it whatsoever. In addition, it does not apply. It only applies to new residences that are built. It's not going to apply to a remodeling or addition to your own home. Have the next slide, please. The second step we have to take is the rezoning of a particular area for zoning for purposes of an alternate energy source. And the one we've selected is a solar field. The designation of the location we've looked at in particular is next to the transfer station. Would you do the next slide, please? The light area is the existing transfer station, which is in fact owned by the town of Dover. The area that we want to rezone by an overlay district, it totals about 17 acres, and it's the area surrounded by the green perimeter. The interesting thing about this is we don't own that land. That's owned by Hale Reservation. But to comply with the green certification requirements, all we have to do is rezone an area. In the future, what Hale elects to do with it or not is totally up to them. It's going to cost us no money. We're going to make no money. All we're doing is rezoning an area that happens to be in our town. By doing that, we thereby comply with the second element to become green certified. Can I have the next slide, please? I saved the best till last, and this is showing you what this certification program leads to. In Sherburne, in 2011, they received over $137,000, as you can see, and in 2015, for another project related to upgrades of the HVAC system, they received $77,000 plus. In Weston, there were 2 grants that were made in 2011 for $136,000 for boiler replacement and $243,000 for energy conservation at the schools and fire department. So in Dover, we're looking at, these are examples of some things that are in the capital budget for fiscal 18. energy, conservation categories, and there are many, many more that would qualify for us to receive this, this grant money. So what it comes down to is become a green designated community, you thereby qualify for grants. Grants are free money. So how good is that? That's what it comes down to. I've looked hard and long to find something wrong with this program. I can't. It's what we make of it. There are numerous opportunities to apply for various conservation-minded projects, and if accepted, we get the money. So I hope you support it. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Donahue. Why don't you be seated, and we'll see if there are any questions. Are there any questions or further discussion on this matter? This is going to be a majority vote. Gentleman standing in the back. Yes, sir.
Campbell Yaw, Walpole Street. Is it reasonable to assume that the people at the Hale Reservation are excited about having this rezoning done to their land and are open to the idea of it being a solar farm or a wind farm or an alternate energy generating space?
I believe Mr. Donahue has been in discussions with, if I could bring a microphone down to Mr. Donahue? Well, it's up to, okay, sure, if you don't mind the walk.
Thank you for asking that. I completely overlooked that. Between the slides and my notes, I missed that. Hale's in the loop on this. They're very enthusiastic. I'm told there are already people from solar companies trying to connect with them. And again, what Hale does with it and what a solar company does with it, that's private enterprise, that's up to them. We simply sit back and watch and hopefully see some solar panels there someday.
Thank you, Mr. Donahue. Gentleman in the back? Oh, no, you don't have a question? Anybody else? Over here, okay. There are two hands that were raised there.
Jim McGuelph from Mr. Donahue. Do you have an idea of what the incremental costs associated with adopting this stretch code add to the building of a new house?
No, I don't, but I'm simply told by the building inspector who's here tonight that it's minimal, and he's worked with it in the past.
I know that it sounds like free money. Are these grants from our tax base that we pay into the state?
Yeah, I was being kind of bold calling it free money. It's our tax dollars coming back to the community.
All right, thank you. Gentleman in the middle.
Dale Freed, 3 Forest Street. The zoned area that you're proposing that works for now, what's the process if someone else wants to rezone some other area? Is this kind of a preemptive thing to keep solar stuff only in that area? What would be the process for rezoning a different area? Thanks.
We're doing this simply to qualify as a green community. Any zoning in the town takes a 2/3 vote, so it's a pretty high bar to rezone an area. I don't think you're going to get anybody in a residential area, an R1, R2, who may have extra land, who wants to come in and rezone their area. It would be quite a hurdle to accomplish.
Any other further questions? This is a majority vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. I hear a few no's, but the majority passes. Can we check the cafeteria?
Say it one more time. Majority vote, yes.
Also passed with a majority vote in the cafeteria. Article 15, large-scale photovoltaic cells. Mr. Cohn.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend the zoning bylaw by adding a new section 185-46.2, the complete text of which is on file in the offices of the town clerk and planning board, to allow and regulate large-scale commercial solar photovoltaic facilities within an overlay district, and to establish such an overlay district on Powasset Street comprised of Board of Assessors Map 19, parcels 002, 004A, and that portion of parcel 004 that is north of the natural gas pipeline easement. And further, that non-substantive changes in the numbering of the zoning bylaw be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the Dover Town Code.
Thank you, sir. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mrs. Gernon has seconded. Now, this is a two-thirds vote because it's an amendment to the zoning bylaw, and I will get a call on Mr. Donahue. If you'd like to discuss this, Mr. Donahue.
Well, because Article 14 and 15 work together, I explained Article 15 in my initial presentation. If anybody has any further questions on it, let the moderator know.
Okay, could I also call on Mr. Sarro, because technically we have to have a report from the planning board for an amendment to a zoning bylaw. Mr. Sarro?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mark Sarro, Colonial Road, and Planning Board Chair. Yeah, so the Planning Board had a public hearing on this article back in February. It was discussed at the Warrant Committee open hearing as well, and the Planning Board filed a written report with the town clerk on the article. The Planning Board's open to answering any questions on the overlay district. Given the vote on the prior article, I would just forego, in the interest of time, any other discussion of it unless you have questions. Thanks.
Okay, are there any questions? I don't see any hands. Okay. So a reminder, this is a two-thirds vote. Oh, there's a hand up here. Okay, thank you.
Would you like, oh, okay.
Oh, they changed their mind. Okay. Discretion is the better part. Oh, okay.
Hi. Mike Busey on Walpole Street. Can this change in zoning be used for anything else besides the photovoltaic zone?
Mr. Sarro, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, sure. So I think the question was whether or not the overlay district could be used to do something other than create a solar PV array, essentially, on the site. So the overlay district doesn't change the fact that these parcels are in a residential area, as it is, and so that primary zoning does not change. This allows for a solar voltaic array to be placed there as well, which wouldn't be the case elsewhere currently under the zoning. So that's the only thing it allows for, and it also creates a process by which that site would be subject to site plan review by the planning board, just to review how it would actually be set up and to be sure that it would comply with other zoning requirements under the code.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, this is a two-thirds vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously in the main hall. Okay, passed by more than two-thirds in the cafeteria. Article 16, site plan approval. Mr. Merrill.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend the zoning bylaw by deleting sections 185-36, site plan approval in business district, medical professional district, and manufacturing district. Section 185-37, harmony in business district, medical professional district, and manufacturing district, and section 185-46.1, site plan approval in their entirety, and replacing them with a new section 185-36 entitled Site Plan Review, as set forth in the handout made available to the town meeting. I've been apprised that there's a modification such that the text that reads, "The complete text of which is on file in the offices of the town clerk and planning board," is to be deleted from this motion, and would go on to say, and to amend section 185.9 by changing the term site plan approval to site plan review, and further, that the non-substantive changes in the numbering of the zoning bylaw be permitted in order that it would be in compliance with the numbering format of the Dover Town Code.
Thank you, Mr. Merrow. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mrs. Gilbarty has seconded. Discussion, Mr. Sarro from the planning board, could you explain this motion, please?
I will. Mark Sarro, Colonial Road and Planning Board Chair. Yeah, the motion sounded more complicated than the actual proposal may be. So Article 16 is a proposal by the Planning Board to revise 3 sections of the current town code that relate to how site plan review is done in the commercial district in town. So the areas in the center of town, there are 3 districts. There's a business district, a manufacturing district, and a medical professional district. The provisions in this part of the zoning bylaw only affect those 3 districts. They don't affect the town's residential districts. So do you want to pull up the slide? I'm going to be brief, but I do want to pull up just a couple of slides since site plan review is probably something that many of you don't deal with very often. So while it's coming up, do you want to grab it? Yeah, just the first slide. Yeah. So site plan review is the process the town relies on to approve certain changes in the way properties are used in the town center. Certain types of changes require businesses to submit what's called a site plan to describe how the property is going to be used and to show how it will be configured for a proposed use. The uses themselves, there are 35 of them, are listed in another section of the town code called the Schedule of Use Regulations. That's in section 185.10. Uses not listed in that table aren't allowed. Uses that are listed are allowed, but many require site plan review by the planning board so that the town can be sure that what's being proposed is consistent with the town's zoning bylaws and regulations and is in harmony with the adjoining properties and the rest of the town center. Since the uses that are being reviewed are already allowed according to that Schedule of Use Regulations, site plan review isn't about allowing them or not. It's only about regulating them by approving and/or conditioning how those uses actually take place. And the proposed bylaw doesn't change that. What the proposed bylaw does do is, if we go to the next slide, there's a comparison of the current and proposed bylaw. It's better organized, it's clearer on what triggers site plan review and how the process works, and what the requirements are for approval of a site plan. And rather than repeatedly clarifying the bylaw for applicants and residents, the board has just opted to suggest revising the bylaw so it's fully clear and to help streamline the process. The proposed bylaw, as I just mentioned with the previous article as well, was filed with the town clerk, posted to the town website back in January. It was vetted at the planning board public hearing in February, at the warrant committee open hearing in March, and at planning board meetings since then. There was also a written report summarizing the proposed bylaw that was put on file at the town clerk. The red lines that were in the version that were handed out tonight highlight, just for the reference of town meeting, the edits the planning board made to its initial proposal as a result of that feedback process. We appreciate those comments. They were very helpful in getting to the final version that we're asking you to approve tonight. So in the interest of time, I won't go through the details other than what you see up on that slide, but just to provide some context. Again, we're just consolidating 3 sections of the bylaw. It doesn't change the uses that are required, that require site plan review. It does change what triggers site plan review. You see a reference there to a trigger being a change in the square footage of a building of 500 square feet or 10% of the building, whichever is less. The proposed bylaw reduces that to 250 square feet of a building or 10%, whichever is less. So it is a broader trigger, and the triggers are very clearly defined in the new bylaw. The bylaw also allows preliminary site plans to be approved with conditions, which is a good time saver and cost saver for both the board and the applicants, because we currently don't have that option. When a preliminary site plan comes in, if the board has any suggestions for changes to it, the applicant just has to go back to square one and come back to the planning board with a different plan. And then finally, the planning board creates some clear deadlines for site plan review, and it increases transparency by requiring a butter notification and a public hearing for full site plan review, which the current bylaw specifically does not call for, either a hearing or a butter notification. So that's it in a nutshell. Thanks. Glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sorrow. Are there any questions or comments on this bylaw? Could you please turn that light off? Thank you. Thanks. Any questions? This is a 2/3 vote. I don't see any hands, so let's move right to the vote. All in favor of this motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. 2/3 has it in the main hall.
Yeah, 2/3 are better. Unanimous in the cafeteria.
It's unanimous in the cafeteria, more than 2/3 here, so the motion carries. Article 17, 46 Springdale Avenue. Mrs. Gilbody.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen, 1, to transfer from general municipal use to the Board of Selectmen for purposes of disposition, and 2, to sell, convey, release, or otherwise dispose of pursuant to Chapter 30B of the Massachusetts General Law any interest in a portion of the land located at 46 Springfield Avenue in Dover, which land is shown as Board of Assessors Map 11, Block 49, Parcel 0, containing approximately 4 acres, and as shown on the plan on file in the office of the town clerk, parens the house lot, end prints. And further, that such disposition be on such terms and conditions as the Board of Selectmen deem appropriate, which may include the reservation of easements and restrictions over, along, or through the house lot, and to transfer from free cash the sum of $50,000 for the purpose of installing a new septic system for the house located at 46 Springdale Avenue in furtherance of the town's disposition of the house lot.
Thank you, Mrs. Gilbody. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mr. Cohn has seconded. We'll now move to discussion. This is going to also be a 2/3 vote because it's the town's disposition of an asset. Mr. Dolly.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bill, you all set? Thank you. The Board of Selectmen are asking the town to approve the subdivision and authorize the sale of the residence and outbuildings along with the repair of the septic system. First, a little background. Bill, next slide, please. Thank you. In April of 2014, the town was notified that a 27.2 acre parcel at 46 Springdale Avenue was under a purchase and sale agreement with Northland Residential Corporation for the development of a 40B project consisting of 40-plus townhouse units. 24 of those 27 acres were classified as a Chapter 61A agricultural land. The town had the option to exercise its right of first refusal to acquire the property. On July 21st, 2014, after completing extensive due diligence, the Board of Selectmen voted to exercise this right contingent upon town meeting and town election approval. On September 15th, 2014, at a special town meeting, the residents voted overwhelmingly, which was 445 yes to 16 no, to acquire the property for $5.55 million. Voters also authorized $25,000 to fund the Springdale Study Committee, which was a Board of Selectmen initiative to include the various professionals in town. I would like to thank them for their very thorough undertaking for all their hard work. They studied the best future use of the property. Then, on November 4th, 2015, at a special town election, the residents once again voted yes, which was 2018 yes votes, 609 no, to authorize the borrowing in the amount of $5,550,000 to acquire 46 Springdale Avenue. As part of the due diligence, the Springdale Study Committee conducted a town-wide survey regarding the interest in various uses of the property. Of the 481 respondents, 84%, or 404, indicated a preference to maintain the property as open space. Now, to get an idea of the value, including values with restrictions, the entire 27.2 acre parcel, just before it was purchased, was assessed at $1.1 million. After the purchase, which is the current assessment, it's $2.2 million. Now, what we did is had conversations with local realtors, and they estimate that the current 4 parcels, including the house and the outbuildings, will generate approximately $1.5 to $2 million in an open bid process. The Board of Selectmen has worked diligently with the Planning Board and determined the configuration of the proposed subdivision serves 2 purposes. First, sell off the existing house and the outbuildings to recoup a portion of the purchase price. And second, retain a beautiful 24-acre parcel as open space for now and future use. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dolly. Mr. Carlucci?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Some may remember that prior to the purchase, the Planning Board had presented some options for development on this parcel, which included possibly a 10-lot subdivision, which would have involved demolition of the existing house, or an 8-lot subdivision, which kept the house and provided some open space, or a 6-lot subdivision with lots of open space. After the purchase, some of us technical staff with the town were assigned to review some configurations for carving off the lot and in order to sell it while retaining the remainder for the to remain as town land. Some of those various configurations that were looked at were to keep to sell off just the house and the pool in the back, or including the guest house, including the barns, including the paddocks. All the options were looked at, and the decision was that it would be best to include all that existing residential use property as part of the sale and retain the rest for open space. That still left some significant issues such as access. So it was considered to leave the existing driveway as part of the sale or as part of the town land. Sharing the driveway perhaps, except our bylaws prohibit shared driveways. Also, we had to ensure that the remaining land met current zoning in terms of both frontage and the perfect square. There are also, of course, wetlands and a stream on the property. So we tried to draw the line such that there would be enough room between the wetlands and the new property line of the house so that we wouldn't, any new access route, if one was ever proposed in the future, would not be too close to the wetlands. So we came up with, if we can show the first slide. Just the property boundaries without the driveway and septic system.
You gotta move the block.
No, I don't, but that's okay. So this is the configuration that we came up with, which includes virtually all of the existing facilities on the site. It does, because of the distance between the wetlands and the property line, we're just cutting the corner of one of the paddocks, so the fence will have to be moved afterwards. And then the other aspect of it is the direct abutter had expressed some interest in purchasing a strip that's currently an easement that's straddled or that's along the property line. So it was decided to include that strip in the sale so that any conveyance to the abutter would be a private transaction and not have to involve the town. As far as access, if we look at the second slide, okay, yeah, so part of the technical issues we also had to look at were it needed a new septic system. The well that serves the house currently is on the portion of the land that would become town land. However, it turned out that there is another well that wasn't active on the west side of the property. That was tested for quality and quantity, and it's adequate to serve the house, so a new connection to that well would be made, and the old well will not exactly be abandoned, but it'll be disconnected and remain in case the town has some use for it in the future. The driveway, we propose a new driveway that would be on the portion of the, that goes with the house for some distance, and then it would connect with the old driveway as shown here, while the existing driveway, the pavement would be taken up so that it would become just a path. So that's where it stands. If this is approved, there are some procedural things that would need to be gone through. The plan needs to go to the planning board for approval, actually for endorsement. There needs to be a filing with the Conservation Commission. The septic system needs to get built, installed. The well needs to be connected. And that's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Carlucci, our town planner. I now would like to call upon Mr. Lawrence, Chair of the Warrant Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This will be brief. The Warrant Committee vote was a split vote, 4-3 on Article 17, and I'm going to quickly summarize the majority's vote. The majority felt that the town has performed the necessary due diligence to make the recommendation that it has. It incorporates both the work of the Springdale Study Committee and the townwide survey that was circulated last summer. By retaining the back 24 acres for general municipal use, it will keep that available for open space and passive recreational purposes. Also, sale of the existing house lot will allow the town to recoup some of the $5.55 million that it expended in purchasing the property. In addition, expending $50,000 to make the septic system Title V compliant will further the town's disposition of the sale of the house. Also, the planning board has reviewed and proposed the proposed site and plan. Those were the reasons for the majority vote on the Warrant Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. We'll now hear from the minority report. Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Next slide. It's not clear to us who voted against recommending Article 17 to the town that alternative disposition scenarios were given their due consideration. We think that these scenarios potentially could achieve the town's goals and perhaps and probably at lower ultimate cost. Next slide. This is the background that Mr. Dawley explained, so we'll go to the next slide as well. And by way of background, the Springdale Study Committee obviously considered a very broad range of options for the use and disposition of the property. The survey, I had 510 people responded. Dawley's was lower, but the main conclusion of the survey was that the preservation of open space is highly valued. Next slide. There were several questions in the survey. It was clear that there's a clear preference for open space and passive recreation. Maybe not the majority, but the mode. The Board of Selectmen put forward Article 17, which divides the property, as Mr. Carlucci mentioned, and provides for the offering for sale of the house lot. Next slide. As Mr. Dawley and Mr. Carlucci and Mr. Lawrence have explained, there's the idea that potentially the house lot could be sold for $1.5 to $2 million out of the $5.55 purchase price. Next slide. As I've said, it appears that only this scenario is given deep financial consideration, and there is some concern by the minority view on the Warrant Committee that the price of 1.5 to 2 million may not be achieved due to uncertainty about the town's plan for the back parcel, because the town will retain it for general municipal use, which could mean a lot of things, as well as complexities related to the way that a government has to sell property. Next slide. There are definitely alternatives which would be consistent with the town's stated preference for 46 Springville and also may provide more attractive costs to the town. Next slide. The alternatives could include the disposition of more of the property in the house lot. It could involve establishing conservation restrictions on the land and/or establishing easements allowing public access to sections of the property. Next slide. There are many ways to configure the house lot which may bring a higher value to the town. Alternative division configuration scenarios may include the following. This is the proposed Article 17 in orange carving out of the house lot. Next slide. Potentially it could be something like this, or next slide, or like this, or perhaps like this. It all remains to be seen how the market would treat those things, those alternatives. But I think they should be looked at and given due consideration. Next slide. As I said, conservation restrictions could be put on part of the additional acreage sold, maybe not the house lot, maybe not the current house lot, but any additional acreage that would be sold, which would also be more attractive to a buyer while also still keeping in tune with the town's objectives. Next slide. And as I've said, with easements as well, those could be achieved. Next. So if the town does approve Article 17 and a sale goes through, we would lose control of the entire parcel for which we paid a significant premium. Obviously, we've heard what the appraisal is, and we know what the price we paid is. It would seem prudent not to rush in and rather to hold off on a sale until a thorough analysis of the alternatives has been considered. Next slide. That's sort of our feeling. It's really up to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Any further questions or discussion? Mr. Long.
Mr. Stewart's certainly on the right track here. Selling this piece of property, the 4 acres, would just be a fiasco. You're looking at trying to sell a piece of property, and you're telling a potential buyer that in front of your house there's going to be an access road, and in back of that and beyond that access road there's a substantial piece of property that the town owns. They say, well, what can the town do with it? And that's a good question, because that isn't being considered adequately here. Now, let me just read you the report of this committee that has been mentioned. The committee's recommendation is to retain town ownership of the entire property, rent the existing facilities to pay for maintenance of property and to reduce outstanding debt, create access to open space for passive recreational use, and to revive the Dover Housing Partnership Committee to develop a housing plan and conduct a comprehensive townwide education campaign. Now, does that sound like preserving open space? It doesn't sound like that to me. What we should do to achieve a maximum return on this property is to put a proper conservation restriction on the property that would cover the entire property, so that there could only be one house, one single-family house on the property, and the rest would remain open space. Now, this would be open space in private ownership, and that would make this property a very attractive purchase for someone who's interested in a horse farm or something along that line. Cutting off the 4 acres and trying to sell that would be a very hard sale, where you're asking people to buy a pig in a poke as far as the property beyond. It just doesn't make any sense. Now, We've spent $5.5 million for this property. The idea was to prevent it from being developed, and now you have a report that says, oh, well, let's develop it for affordable housing. Well, I don't think so. Let's stick with the original plan. We spent $5.5 million for this. Let's at least get a decent chunk of it back and use it, use our property the way we intended to do it initially when we authorized that expenditure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Any further questions or discussion? Yes, lady in the front.
Kristen Dennison, Springdale Avenue. I just have a question about if the property was sold, given the plan that we saw, is the only access to the remaining property by foot, or would there be a possibility for access, would there be an access road to a parking area? If townspeople wanted to use that, how would they get there?
Thank you. Mr. Donnelly, would you like to answer that?
Yes, I will. Thank you. Great question. Thank you. The plan is to have a permanent access to the back 24 to the left of the property. We don't have it up. Bill, do you have it up, please? If you can envision, I'm standing on Springdale Ave. I'm looking at the property. The house will be on the right. The access will be on the left. Yes, only by foot contemplated right now. They'll be parking at Channing Pond.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments? Lady in front.
Hi, Amelia Slosby on Normandy Road. I just had a question. If we voted against this, as the minority of the warrant committee suggested, does it go back to the planning process? Does it just reboot, or what would the next step for that vote be?
Okay, thank you. Question is, what happens if this motion is voted down, Mr. Dowling?
Quite honestly, the town owns the land right now, and the Board of Selectmen in the future would decide some fashion to come back to a town meeting. And it would be the same if we just kept the 24 acres, if you voted to approve this evening. Again, in the future, it would come, the Board of Selectmen would create an article for a future town meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Clark, gentleman in the front here.
On neither for or against this, but just asking for a clarification.
Sorry, Mr. Clark, just for the record, could you state your name and address?
Jerry Clark, Valley Road. Just as a matter of clarification, it would seem that if this motion passes, which is an authorization to the Board of Selectmen to go forward with their plans to sell, perhaps at the $1.5 million to $2 million. If that sale price were not achieved, there is no restriction on the sale of that property for any other amount, even though it may be lower. I just wanted to make sure that's my understanding, that the town meeting isn't authorizing the sale of the property at an explicit price, so that it's conceivable that if Mr. Long is correct, a substantially lower figure would be realized.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Mr. Dowling?
If I'm correct in hearing you're asking, are we putting specific price on the RFP? What was the question then?
I believe the question was whether the town would be selling the property at any price.
No, it's really a legal question. And that is specifically the motion of the town meeting authorizes the selectmen at their determination to dispose of the property at a price only determined by the selectmen, irrespective of any numbers that have been discussed here.
So the question, Bill, can you help me out on that?
We return this to the town council, Mr. Leahy.
I don't know how that question's being spent.
Bill Leahy, Town Council. My understanding of the question is, does this motion require the selectmen to sell it at a certain...
It's actually just the reverse.
No, I was going to answer the question, which is that, let me answer it simply. This motion does not constrain the selectmen in any particular price. It leaves that to their discretion. Clear? Yeah. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Leahy. Any other questions or discussion? Yes, gentleman in the front. Hold it, wait for the microphone, sir.
Harvey George, County Street and Board of Health. If the motion is voted down, will there be a hold on the $50,000 expenditure for the septic system?
Good question. Mr. Dolly?
Will there be a hold on the septic? Is that what the question was? I didn't hear. Yeah, we would not proceed with that. That's correct. We would not proceed with the repair of the septic system.
Any other questions or discussion? Yes, sir.
John Mealy, 22 Wakeland Road. You know, since we've purchased the property, I think we should keep it right now for a while until we really decide what we want to do with it, where the driveways would be. You've got wetland there with a brook. I don't know about a road that close to that spring brook there. So let's put it aside for a year and come up with some other decisions that would support the property. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions, discussion? Gentleman in the middle.
Dale Freed, 3 Forest Street. What would it take to rent it out currently? Just to fix the septic and then we could rent it, have some revenue and kind of kick the ball down the road a little bit, or is it more complicated than that?
That's a couple of different part question. First of all, we did rent it for the first 6 months after we purchased it, thereabouts, to the seller, who needed time to acquire a new home. Since then, it's been vacant. And if we were to go into the landlord business, residential landlord business, which the town is not set up to do, the financing of the property would take 2 stages, much like it did the first year with the bond anticipation notes. So there are technicalities involved. Now, to the extent we have to repair the septic system, I'm not an expert in that, but Mr. Ramsey, do you know the answer to that? To rent it, would we have to repair the septic, or is that just transfer of the property?
I may be kicking this matter back to town council. There is a requirement under Title V at some point with a real estate transaction that it kicks in a Title V assessment and perhaps repair. I don't know if that would come into play now. Currently, the cesspools that are there, they were functioning as far as cesspools do for the past occupant. But again, I don't know whether Title V, when there's a real estate transaction, it kicks in an obligation to come in fuller compliance with the existing Title V regulations.
Mr. Leahy, would you care to comment?
Yeah. I can't answer that definitively to know whether we're going to would be fully obligated to fully upgrade. So I just can't say for sure, Dave.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Donahue.
Thank you. Jack Donahue, 3 Main Street, and I'm speaking only for myself. Mr. Long is right. I read the study report, which I must say the study group did a tremendous job and a very thorough evaluation of the options on this property. It's 150 pages, small print. But to vote in favor of this article tonight is a big mistake. You're foreclosing yourself of many other options that can be achieved based upon the recommendation of those 455 people that indicated what they wanted for it. So I support the minority view, and I support Mr. Long's position, and a vote for this is a big mistake.
Thank you, Mr. Donahue. I think we're ready to move to a vote. This is a 2/3 vote, so it'll be required 2/3 approval. Let's try a voice vote first before we move to a standing vote to see if we can determine whether there's 2/3 approval. All in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. Even I can tell the difference, but let's see if the cafeteria has the same view. Okay, the motion did not carry in the cafeteria or the main hall. On to the next article, Article 18, the rail trail. Before we begin, let me call your attention to the handout on procedure. In particular, if you turn to the back page of that handout, there's a discussion of motion to reconsider. I know that there will be some temptation to leave this meeting after this motion is considered and voted on, but in doing so, you risk the possibility that there will be a new vote after you leave, and it may be a different result. Town meeting can reconsider a motion until the meeting is dissolved. And you can tell we've been trying to move rapidly through here. I hope to have us out of here all by 11 o'clock. Yeah. I thought you'd be happy with that. Okay.
You can always come back tomorrow.
Yeah. The alternative would be to come back tomorrow. So this is a nice way of saying let's keep our comments fairly brief. Please don't repeat facts that have already been stated, and don't make arguments that have already been made. We're going to have a presentation from the proponents of the rail trail and the opponents of the rail trail. And at this point, since this is a citizen's petition, I would now like to ask Kevin Ban, who is a proponent, to make the main motion. Mr. Ban?
Thank you.
Hi, Kevin Ban, 7 Pleasant Street. I move that the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen on such terms and conditions as the Board of Selectmen deem appropriate to acquire a leasehold interest in, on, over, across, under, and along all or any portion of the land known as Bay Colony Railroad Line or right-of-way within the town of Dover, excluding the portion of the Bay Colony Railroad Line that includes any bridge, trestle, or supporting structure that spans the Charles River, for the purposes of establishing, constructing, operating, and maintaining a multi-use path for non-motorized transportation, open space, and recreation purposes, and for all other purposes for which rail trails are now or hereafter may be used in the Commonwealth Rail Trail, provided, however, that the Board of Selectmen shall not enter into any such lease until the town has, 1, received at least $50,000 in the forms of gifts or grant monies to obtain environmental insurance that would satisfy the coverage requirements necessary to enable the town to avail itself of the protections of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 23A, Section 31. And 2, negotiated a lease that permits the town to limit development of the rail trail to that portion of the rail trail extending south of Springdale Avenue.
Thank you, Dr. Ban. Do I have a second? Sir, could you just step up to the microphone and identify yourself?
Alan Moss, 30 Haven Street. I second the motion.
Thank you, sir. Motion has been made and the motion has been seconded. At this point, I would like to ask Dr. Ban and Mrs. Missy Gramer to step forward. They are going to make a joint statement, and I appreciate their willingness to do this, and in fact, it was at their suggestion.
Hi, everyone. I wish I had some bags of candy to give out so you can kind of pep up for this part. Thank you for coming out tonight. We are really happy that this night has finally gotten here. It's very exciting to see so many people involved in town meeting. I was on this stage 5 years ago asking you for your support to move the Chickering auction to the school in order to save the PTO money. Honestly, I didn't think I'd ever be back up here again, but here I am. This has been a lot of work for a lot of people. Everyone is so busy with their lives, and taking on something like this is impressive. Thank you to everyone here who has contributed their time and effort. And thank you for tonight listening respectfully to both of our points of view and then voting. We really appreciate it.
I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. There's a lot of passion around this issue, but I agree with everything that Missy said. We really want this to be an open, honest discussion so that we can drive down on the facts around this decision that'll be important for the town. When we started the Friends Group, we did it because we wanted to build on the community that Dover already has. We got together and we talked about community, getting connected, and the last thing we would ever have wanted to do was to divide the town in some way. And so it was easy. In fact, throughout this entire process, I look at Ted and Missy Gramer, we were in communication and talking to one another. And it was easy for us to write a letter earlier last week and to make this statement. So thanks very much.
Thank you, and greatly appreciate the willingness of both sides to set the tone for what I hope will be a very collegial and informative discussion. Now, at this point, I've asked both parties, the proponents and opponents, to present 10 minutes highlighting their case. And after we've heard from them, we will then hear from the Board of Selectmen and the Warrant Committee, and then we'll open it up for discussion and comments from the floor. So, Dr. Ban, would you like to begin?
Yeah, good question. What's the best way? Should I just use this, or can we turn it so that I can see that? You know what I can do is actually, I can, yeah, it's kind of stuck there. I think what I'll do is I'll ask you to just turn the slides, and then I can just see it with the iPad. What's that? Oh, sorry about this. Apologies, folks. We'll have to fix it when, yeah. Thank you, Alan. Okay. So, a lot of people who have asked who the Friends of the Dover Greenway are. You know, there's been some conversation about whether or not we're backed by some out-of-town corporation, or if we have people who aren't from Dover. And what I'll tell you is that the Friends of the Dover Greenway are sitting next to you. There are 10 of us. We're all Dover residents. We're your friends. We are your neighbors, your colleagues. We are your coaches. We lead scout groups. Nothing more than that. And what I would like to say to the Friends of the Dover Greenway is, regardless of what happens with this vote, you have been great friends. Your work will be remembered, and I'm really proud to be a friend. Thank you. What I'd like to do is take that motion, which is pretty complicated, and try to break that down. And let's do that one step at a time. Can you help me with that? So next slide. What this does is it authorizes the Board of Selectmen to acquire the lease. Next slide. It does so excluding the bridge that spans the Charles River. In fact, if we wanted to ever in the future expand that, we would have to come back and vote for that. Next slide. But not before, next slide, we receive funding for the environmental insurance policy. And lastly, we ensure that the lease will permit development only from the portion from Springdale Avenue south. So that's what it says. Next slide. I want you to focus for just a moment on the picture on the right. You all know this place. I suspect you've probably on vacation at the Cape or elsewhere, or maybe on the Holliston Trail, been there. That's a safe place. That's a place where our children can ride their bicycles without fear of getting hit by a car. That's a place where our seniors can walk on a flat trail without fear of tripping. That's a place on a Sunday morning where a family can push a stroller, again, safely. That place is an eyesore. That place is owned by the MBTA. Next slide. I want to frame this for you a little bit by starting with what this is not. This is not the Minuteman paved trail. This will not be paved. This will not be a commuter rail. This will look like those pictures. It'll respect the character of this town, and it will not in any way draw people from outside it, we believe, but I'll get into that more. Next slide. So what does yes mean tonight? If you vote yes tonight, that's a handoff to the Board of Selectmen. That gives them the opportunity to acquire and negotiate around the lease. That's what this is tonight. Now, the Friends we won't go away. We are going to stand next to the selectmen and raise the funds. But most important is going forward, all of the decisions, all of the governance will be led by the Board of Selectmen. Next slide. Look at this map for 1 second. The Rail Trail Committee was started by the town. When the Friends we put the Friends together to support that effort, the idea was to develop the entire expanse of the rail trail. What we learned, talking to people, meeting with abutters, going into their homes and in their backyards, is that there was a better solution for Dover. And that solution looks like this. A trail that starts in the center of town at Springdale and runs south to Hunt Drive. North of town center, undeveloped, does not connect any of them. South of Hunt Drive, undeveloped, does not connect to Medfield. Next slide. We believe that there are tremendous protections that's coming, and this is a low-risk project. We are not trailblazers here. The first rail trails happened in 1963. Thousands of miles of rails have been converted into trails. There is information about this. More than 60 communities have done this in the Commonwealth. 49 have done it with MBTA. Now, we've developed a scope such that we believe this will be for Dover residents. So if you'd like to know who's going to be using this, look left, look right. It's the people in this room. And lastly, we believe that there are significant protections when it comes to environmental. Next slide. Overwhelmingly, well, I'm going to take a step back. A lot of people asked us questions about this, and that was wonderful, because we really had to do a deep dive into the environmental piece and really understand what it was going to look like. And what we know from experts in the town and 3 LSPs who live in this, experts in the state and 3 LSPs who live in this town, is that this is a plus. If you are concerned about creosote ties and rails that run through the center of our town, then you will vote in favor of the rail trail. Because pulling up those rails, getting rid of those ties, and capping that with stone dust remediates the problem. Next slide. We talked to a lot of people. We met with a lot of people. We believe this can be a trail for everyone. We want it to be low maintenance. We want to be sure that it maintains the character of Dover. We want to be sure that privacy screening is available for abutters who want that. And very important is that we will allow horse crossings, as has always happened with the rails in Dover, and we will in no way interfere with the annual hunt. Look at the last piece. Along with bringing safety to our families and our kids who want to walk and ride on the streets, thousands of miles of rail have been converted, and the data clearly shows that crime does not go up and property values do not go down. Next slide. I'm not going to focus too much on cost other than to say that Beals and Thomas, which was an independent study funded by the Friends, given to the selectmen, who then contracted the study, have in great detail outlined the costs. We expect it to cost about just over $1.1 million, along with maintenance costs, which the Friends will bear. Tax dollars will not go up. There will be no ask. Parking, something that people are concerned about, and you're right to be. Both the Rail Trail Committee in town and Beals and Thomas covered parking, and we have adequate parking. Next slide. In fact, the numbers that have floated around are 100,000 per year. That's 3 times the number of people who go to NOAANET. Our numbers are different. Our numbers look like a population of 6,000, not 40,000 collectively. And that dot is not a smudge. That's what we anticipate, about 200 per weekend. Next slide. What if we don't do this? Well, we have 2 examples nearby. Weston voted against this, and the Department of Conservation and Recreation captured the land, subleased it to Eversource, who put in an access road. They are now building a rail trail to connect Wayland to Waltham. Weston is trying to figure out how to be a part of that. Sudbury last year voted no. Same type of thing as we're doing tonight. Eversource right now is trying to capture the lease so that they can put up power wires. Next one. I'd like to end here. I've talked about a lot of good that can come from this, but I want to give the word now to Judith Ursetti. 1 out of 5 Americans suffer from a disability. That means 20% of the citizens of Dover have disabilities. And I believe that this rail trail, we believe that this rail trail is a wonderful opportunity for them. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to Judith Ursetti.
He's very tall. Judith Ursetti, 5 Yorkshire Road. Many of you will remember just a few months back, my son Jack, who is perhaps the most handsome 12-year-old living here in Dover, went missing. He went missing from our home. My son Jack has severe autism. Many of you know him very well. He's nonverbal. He has no concept of danger. And about half the individuals that live on the autism spectrum are subject to wandering. And the big risk there is being hit by a car, drowning in the Charles River. There's a high fatality rate when individuals with autism do wander. So of course we were frantic, we were concerned. That Saturday afternoon, we were out, we called law enforcement immediately to help us. But what was even more beautiful was within minutes in our neighborhood, on Yorkshire, Greystone, all around, cars began circling. People stopped their yard work. They came out to help us look for our boy. And I'm so happy to tell you that within an hour, we found him. He was smiling, he was shoeless, but he was okay. And we were so thankful, so grateful, so relieved. We checked all the locks on our doors, put his coat back on, brought him inside. The one thing we were not was surprised about the response that our family received when our boy went missing. Our Dover residents, our Dover friends who we've lived with for 10 years, they came out immediately. This is Dover. This is who we are. This is what we do for our people with disabilities. So I come to you tonight and I ask you to look to your right or to your left. The CDC estimates that 1 in 5 individuals live with a disability. That's your grandmother who's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. That's my son Jack, who lives with autism spectrum disorder by no choice of his own and will live with that the rest of his life. That is my friend who has a visual impairment, who can no longer navigate the rocks and the roots on our trails. They can't hike anymore, and they need a stone path, a safe place to get the physical exercise that the experts know can make a difference in the lives of these people.
10 seconds, Mrs. Erzardi.
Thank you so much for your consideration tonight. And when you make your decision with good arguments on both sides, I would ask you to please keep true to Dover. Think of our citizens with disabilities, and when you do, I believe that that vote will be yes. Thank you so much.
Please hold your applause till we vote. If we could now have Andres Rapala and Missy Gramer make their presentation.
No, I got it, it's all right. Yeah. Okay, all right. Over the next few minutes, you will hear a different point of view on why you should vote no on Article 18. So the Be True to Dover supporters came together over the last few months, and they make up a really diverse group of people as well in town. There's some long-time residents. I made a new friend, Jimmy Walker. He's lived here for 55 years. There's new families. There's grandparents and singles and dog lovers and horse lovers, people who live right next to the rail bed and the conservation land, and mostly people who just cherish this unique rural town surrounded by suburbia. Next slide, please. So the people we met, their aspirations are the same: keeping Dover rural, supporting conservation efforts and open space, and being a part of a town that's fiscally responsible. They are people who believe in taking a careful approach when making decisions about new projects in town. Next slide. In conversations, we kept hearing people chose Dover for their families because it's rural. It has remained rural in a time where development is happening all around us. And they also like our school system. Next slide, please. Tonight, we're going to discuss some areas where people have concerns about why we think that you should vote no tonight on Article 18. There are financial concerns, environmental concerns, abutters and the current users of the area, traffic, safety, parking, and long-term concerns that we have.
Next slide, please. So let's take the financial considerations. Thank you, Kevin. The proposed trail is, in essence, an unpaved roadway. It will be town infrastructure. Historically, infrastructure projects have resulted in unforeseen expenses. The proponents have pledged to gift $5,000 annually for 10 years. Thank you. To maintain this new infrastructure. In the absence of additional funds, unforeseen expenses will lead to increased budgets, higher taxes for all of us. Do we want to impose this sort of burden on our citizens for the next 99 years? That's the term of the lease. Over the long run, 2, 3, or 4 decades out, will funding by the proponents continue to cover all and likely rising expenses? Can we be assured Friends of the Greenway will be around in 10, 20, or more years? In their absence, would our taxes pick up the difference? Our town, other towns that started with gifted funds, such as Needham, are now asking their citizens to fund additional capital budget requirements. Finally, consider variable expenses. the MBTA requires Dover to protect it through an environmental insurance policy during construction. Each incident triggers a $50,000 deductible payment by Dover. After construction, our town assumes liability for any problems. If there is a problem, we own it. How many incidents will there be over the next 2, 3, 4 decades and beyond? Environmental laws will change, as they have in the recent past, likely increasing incident levels and our costs. Next slide, please. Environmental considerations. This proposed trail is an unpaved road, 14 to 24 feet wide, when accounting for the embankments and the rails. Construction will require we clear trees, vegetation, and habitats for birds, many animal species, for a 2 to 3 mile stretch, alongside our precious conservation land. We cannot underestimate the risks and complexity in disturbing these grounds without impact to the environment or unforeseen expenses. Contaminants from years of coal-fired train usage are factually known to exist along rail corridors. And rest assured, these toxins do exist. Otherwise, why would the MBTA not allow Dover to take soil samples prior to signing this lease agreement? Nature is already down the path of reclaiming this land. After a decade of inactivity and without impact to the environment, it is best left undisturbed. Next slide, please. Now, the abutters and the considerations. Let's be thoughtful and considerate of the corridor's neighbors. Many of us are here tonight, and others have been active and contributing members of this wonderful rural community. For example, the Dover Hunt Club has maintained abutting equestrian trails for over 100 years for the benefit of all of us. Consider the abutting conservation land. Although it cannot speak for itself, I am certain it screams for peace and serenity. Also, current users of the corridor, equestrians, dog owners, hikers, will suffer from interrupted use during construction and ongoing restricted use if this pedestrian and cyclist roadway is implemented. Next slide, please. Now, we heard about the Beals and Thomas study, and that study states that due to environmental risks to erosion and capped contaminants, this land, this hard stone dust surface, must not be accessed from its edges along the way. You can't go from your yard or another trail in the woods to this trail on its sides. There will be designated entry and exit points on Hunt Drive and Springdale Avenue. Hunt Drive is the preferred route for Dover's emergency vehicles to reach our middle school and high school, as well as other parts of that side of town. Cars parked by trail users along both sides of Hunt Drive will likely impede or slow emergency access, as well as increase safety risks for pedestrians and equestrians attempting to cross the road. How will we protect users of the trail at these highly trafficked entry and exit points? Dover Police Chief McCowan has already expressed concerns about high speeds and limited visibility on Springdale Avenue at Town Center. Over time, risks are likely to increase if we add pedestrian volume and new businesses at Town Center, such as the proposed Dunkin' Donuts. And can we believe that placing an unsightly flashing beacon light at that intersection will actually solve these risks? or will it likely contribute to our existing traffic flow challenges at Town Center? Will these risks, over the course of 1, 2, 3, 4 decades and beyond, result in a requirement to redesign the intersection at Town Center, add parking by Hunt Drive, other unforeseen capital projects? Will these projects be funded by our taxes? Next slide. Now, there's a parking consideration. There is no additional parking planned with this proposed capital project. The proposal suggests we already have ample parking. All of us have experienced limited parking at Town Center. Popular library events fill that lot. High school sports fundraising car washes take place regularly at Townhouse parking lot, and cyclists and users of our existing 60 miles of trails park in town as a meeting place. There is no parking lot at Hunt Drive, which is a point of entry and egress. As the lease corridor is further developed beyond this initial phase discussed tonight, we will be asked to fund capital projects to add parking or other requirements. It's inevitable. Needham, for example, has asked its residents to support a capital budget increase of $162,000 for one new parking lot for corridor users.
So we have long-term considerations. We understand that Article 18 is only asking to develop a portion of the corridor, and the small little map is taken from the Friends of the Dover Greenway website, but you can see that it's part of a much larger Bay Colony Rail Trail. So we just want you to understand that the remainder of the corridor in Dover could be developed in the future and easily connect to the other towns. And if it connects, that means there's higher utilization, and that will result in higher taxes and more services in our center. Next slide. The Bay Colony Rail Organization in Needham's a well-organized group, and they promote the section of our trail on their website.
15 seconds.
Okay. And they also provided some funding to our feasibility study. Next slide. 15 seconds. My gosh, you can skip to the next slide. There's the bridge. Forget it. We're not doing it. There's a cost-benefit analysis. Look at what we already have. We have 1,500 acres of conservation land and 60 miles of trails. Don't we have enough, is what people are saying. Can't we fix some of them to help people with a special need like Judith's son? We have so many. Why would we take the risk? Next slide. This is a 99-year lease for the entire corridor. Just please be aware of that. 99 years. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. We will now hear from the Board of Selectmen. Mr. Dolly.
Thank you. Article 18 asks the town if they will allow the Board of Selectmen to enter into lease negotiations with the MBTA for the purpose of a possible recreational trail. Robin and Candace will speak to this shortly, but I wanted to say that the Board of Selectmen unanimously voted to approve this article at a recent meeting. I want to say...
Please hold your applause until the vote. Thank you.
I want to say thank you to both sides of the discussion. Your unwavering dedication to your positions should be commended, and is a great example of volunteering your time for the benefit of town. The reasons I voted to approve this article were twofold. One, there was very important aspects of this that have not been answered and could not be answered in time for tonight, including the lease. Allowing the process to be thoroughly vetted is an important step. Secondly, the two sides of this discussion have presented views that are literally 180 degrees apart, and I personally wanted to hear from the undecideds and whether they thought it was a good idea for the BOS to negotiate a lease on behalf of the entire town. Lastly, to reiterate my earlier comments, debate is a key component to our process and democracy. Civil dialogue during this debate shows respect, and the demonstrated civility eases the path to invite others to join the debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. my recommendation, if you have a very strong feeling and you are opposed to the rail trail, this is your opportunity to vote no on Article 18. If, on the other hand, you have some question or you would like the Board of Selectmen to explore the terms of the lease, you are debating about the value of the rail trail to this community, your yes vote will be, in essence, a maybe. No means no, but yes means maybe. We will take a look at the terms of the lease and bring those terms back to the townspeople probably a year from now for the townspeople to clearly understand what you're signing up for. As they've touched on tonight, 99 years is a long time. There are issues of environmental concerns, those things we need to vet very thoroughly with the townspeople. So I would like a much broader base of guidance from all of you after we take a look at the lease. That is, if in fact the vote is a yes tonight, authorizing us to explore it further.
So with the risk of repeating everything that's already been said tonight, I know all of us would like to get home by 11 p.m. I would like to say that I too feel it's important for us as a community, if the town would like us, if the town votes yes, we as a Board of Selectmen will negotiate a lease, we'll look at all the reports that have been provided, we'll look at environmental insurance, do our due diligence, and come back to the town with answers to questions that have been posed by both sides.
Thank you. Now to the Warrant Committee. Ms. Canny, Mrs. Canny.
It is the opinion of the members of the Warrant Committee who voted in favor of recommending Article 18. It is the opinion of the members of the Warrant Committee who voted in favor of recommending Article 18 that a yes vote would compel the Board of Selectmen to undertake the negotiation of a lease for the abandoned rail bed and would continue the thorough evaluation of the development of a recreational path. We put forth our trust that the Board of Selectmen will dutifully endeavor to negotiate a lease with the terms that would be within the best interests of the residents of the town of Dover and for today and for future generations to follow. It is through this process that the town may find answers to all and any remaining questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Canny. Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'd like to thank everybody for coming, and I also acknowledge there's many legitimate ways of viewing this issue. The Warrant Committee did issue a 3-page write-up. If you haven't read it, I encourage you to do so between now and the time for the vote. And it was a 4-4 vote on the Warrant Committee as well. I'm not going to reiterate everything for the 4 people who voted no to Article 18, but I am just going to add a few points. First, as a matter of principle, we generally don't believe in conveying power to an executive unless we want that executive to use that power. And I do view the rail trail, or excuse me, the language in Article 18 a little differently than how I've heard it presented. Specifically and in pertinent part, it says to acquire and leasehold interest from the MBTA for purposes of establishing a rail trail. It does not say to enter into negotiations with the MBTA. Accordingly, the Board of Selectmen, if there is a yes vote tonight, could theoretically sign a lease with the MBTA tomorrow. Second, we believe the sequencing is backwards, that we should not give the Board of Selectmen authority to enter into to acquire a leasehold interest until we first know how a majority of the town feels about the rail trail. There's been a healthy and robust debate generated by the rail trail issue in Article 18, and it is our opinion that we should first have an up or down vote on the rail trail and see if there is majority support for the rail trail before authorizing the Board of Selectmen to expend time, energy, resources, and money in attempting to negotiate with the MBTA to acquire a leasehold interest. This conclusion is bolstered by the fact, given that the Board of Selectmen has already said that they will take the issue to the town for an up or down vote. If that's the intent of the Board of Selectmen, let's do that first before any resources are expended. Finally, and as detailed in the write-up, we have a number of concerns about the lease that has been presented to us, but the primary concern is the 99-year term of the lease. We're reluctant to bind the town of Dover contractually to anything for 99 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Mr. Lawrence. Okay, we will now open it up for comments and questions. Please, just new facts or new perspectives. Mr. Howe. Okay, I have a microphone up front here, please.
I'm Ty Howe, 117 Farm Street. I wanted to answer two questions for myself by reaching out to people in the know. The first question had to do with, is there an increase in crime? And so last week I reached out to 8 towns that have rail trails in this part of Massachusetts. I spoke or heard back from either the chief or lieutenants on the various police forces from 7 of those towns. They reported that there were no problems, no increase in crime. So they're the experts, and I take them at their word. The second thing that I wanted to investigate is, what's the status of environmental insurance? I work for Marsh & McLennan. We're the world's largest insurance broker. We broker more environmental insurance than anybody in the world. And so I called one of my colleagues who does nothing but environmental insurance, and I asked him the question, is it easy to get environmental insurance for this type of project? He reported that it was. And so then I spoke to the leading insurer of this kind of risk in Massachusetts to see what their position was on it. And they have not had any sorts of claims problems. So for that, I was able to answer 2 questions. One is there an increased amount of crime? It seems like the answer would be no. And is environmental risk truly a risk? It's pretty much been a claims-free book of business for the leading insurer.
Any more questions or additional comments? Gentleman in the back. Please stand.
My name's Leonard Spalding. I live at 4 Cornell Road. I have concerns with respect to 2 things at least. One, the provision that prevents us from doing any soil testing or other tests before we sign this lease. It's a pig in a poke, to quote somebody who spoke earlier. Number 2, as far as the financial implications are concerned, the insurance only covers us, as I understand it, the policy that comes with the MTAT lease only covers us for about 5 years, and the financing commitment is for 10 years, but it depends on voluntary contributions, which may or may not be forthcoming in the future. I think there's needs to be some consideration of these and other issues before we authorize the selectmen to actually enter into a lease. I think we ought to let them go discuss and negotiate, subject to approval by the town later on, rather than vote to approve this right now.
Thank you, sir. Please hold the applause. We have 2 citizens from the cafeteria.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Sarah Molyneux. I live at 7 Wilsondale Street, and I have answered a couple questions, I think, myself. I have a unique perspective on owning a farm. I've had the great fortune of being able to live on a farm in Dover for 37 years now. We have horses. I have actually ridden with the Norfolk Hunt. I have actually ridden next to the train track in the era, this is before I lived here, actually, where there was a train, and when a train went by, I can assure you this was highly exciting stuff. But I wanted to say that there are frequent equestrian users, I think, in this town. I'm not sure how many actually use the forests and trails on a weekly basis. I'd love to see a show of hands for people who are out there on horses on a weekly basis. But I think we still do have a few equestrians left in the area. I'm not sure how they would be disfavored, actually, because There was no ability to ride on the tracks there ever. So I think that we have heard tonight that we're going to be able to ride wherever we rode before, exactly in the same places. What does actually disfavor people trying to use public lands is when private lands get closed, trails that used to be open to the public get closed to public access. That indeed is a big problem. So my younger son is a huge fan of bicycling, and when he was in middle school, he'd say, "Mom, I would give anything to be able to bike to Dover Middle School, Dover Sherburne Middle School and High School." Unfortunately, that did not happen. I've got experience on many rail trails, and I also, living on Wilsondale Street, will
15
tell
seconds,
you
Ms. Molyneux.
that Wilsondale Street is by far the best road bike trail in the town of Dover. We have, I think, about 500. If we do apples to apples on a Saturday in May, we have about 500 riders going down Wilsondale Street. I can assure you they're not going to be road bikers on this trail in the stone dust. Stone dust lasts a long time. I've had a stone dust riding arena for 30 years, no maintenance. And they're not going to be mountain bikers. Those people will be up in Noannet. They're going to be families like you and me. I'm very proud of us in Dover tonight for going green, and I'd love to see us get out of our cars and onto bikes. Thanks.
Thank you. Next. Go ahead.
Good evening, Megan Malls, 11 Sherbrooke Drive. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and we do love the Noannet trails. One of the reasons I am in favor of the rail trail is because a disease has struck people in my family and my friends, and also people in my neighborhood, which is Lyme disease. And I just wanted to bring up a very quick point that I read in a Columbia University 2013 study from the Lyme and Tick-Borne Disease Research Center, which is that ticks are discouraged from crossing over stone dust, which reduces the likelihood in instances of most debilitating illnesses, such as Lyme disease and other tick-borne illnesses. I'm sure that's not to say that ticks are not around a rail trail, but I'm certainly heartened by the idea that this trail could be safe not only for children but adults alike who are affected by Lyme disease, and I would just like to bring that one point up for your consideration this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Ms. Urentan, Kent? Oh, I'm sorry, we'll get to you next.
Yeah, I'm Justine Kent Uritam, and I probably know about half the people in the town. I've lived here 40 years, and I came in as a young person, and now I'm an old grandmother. I'm one of these people who actually is handicapped. I have rheumatoid arthritis. I live on Haven Street. The traffic is, I'm going to say 3 things: traffic, ticks, and taxes. The traffic in Dover over the 40 years I've lived here has increased exponentially. So from my point of view, to have one place in Dover, one street, one flat surface where one can walk without being frightened, I would give anything for that. Second, ticks. This young lady just preempted my speech. Yes, they aren't on rail trails. How do I know this? I've been involved for the last 20 years with the Upper Charles Rail Trail in Holliston. I've been taking people from Dover to see it for the last couple of years. It's a fantastic amenity for that town. While popular, it is not mobbed. And ticks are on the sides of the trail where the woods are, but on the flat stone dust surface, no, they do not like sun, and they do not like a cement composite, so you don't have to worry about walking on the trail. And taxes. The last thing, I am a cheap wasp. For those of you who...
30 seconds,
Okay,
Mrs. Clinton.
as you well know, Jim, I write these letters. We're sitting on a lot of money in our town. I wish it would go to, frankly, bringing down our taxes. But since it hasn't yet, These young people that I've been working with, Kevin et al. And Alan, are raising the money for this trail, and I would not vote for it unless they raise the entire money for the construction, and I have told them I'm not voting for it unless you raise about a $500,000 in advance stewardship fund. So that's why I'm supporting the rail trail, okay? And I hope you'll say yes to number 18.
Thank you. Gentleman in the corner, sir.
Maxwell Morton, 9 Sterling Drive. Mr. Moderator, I would request that you clear up what appears to be a misunderstanding. As I read this, and as I listen to the select persons, they have said that they will come back to the town meeting before they agree or sign any lease. That's not as I read the article. I would be very happy if the article did in fact state that the select persons go through all of their fact-finding and discussions, and before they sign a lease, they bring it back to town meeting. And I would like the article to state that, and I would leave that to the wordsmiths to arrange that.
Well, sir, I appreciate the question. It's an excellent question, but I'm going to turn this to town council. Do you want to answer this, Bill, or do you want me to answer it? The town meeting is not allowed to mandate that the Board of Selectmen take certain action. Town meeting can make a suggestion to the Board of Selectmen, but we are not allowed to require that they take certain action because that abridges their discretion. This actually came up in 2013 when we adopted a bylaw with respect to Carroll Park that would have required the selectmen in the Parks and Recreation to bring back to town meeting a vote on the new fields, and the Attorney General said that that violated Massachusetts statutes and regulations. There had, in fact, been an opinion of council that was issued earlier this year with respect to whether we could phrase the statute in such a way that it would mandate the Board of Selectmen to take specific action with respect to the rail trail. In this case, it was to execute the lease, and we had an opinion of council that that's not permitted either. So unfortunately, I think that what you're suggesting is outside the scope of the authority that we as town meeting have. Yes, sir.
Then I would suggest that we vote this down until such time as the selectmen can give us a preliminary negotiation plan for approval, plus answering all the questions that they have indicated are needed to be answered. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Gentleman in the middle, please stand.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening. My name is Joe Murray. Claudia and I live at 142 Farm Street, so when all your kids play soccer on the Dover-Sherburne field, you're looking at our house. We raised 3 kids in that house and have really it's been a very important part of the raising of the kids of living in Dover. And I think all of us are here. Certainly one of the major reasons is the ability to raise kids, to go to the wonderful school that we're sitting at here. And so kids is a fundamental part of our decision. And one of the things that I think we all know, and living on Farm Street, as you probably can guess, that in no time, at any time, did any of our kids ever ride a bicycle or walk on Farm Street. And that rural setting of Dover is wonderful because we don't have sidewalks and we don't have street lights, and that certainly is something that appeals to that rural nature. But we need to be able to compensate for that. And so as I look at this question of the rail trail, I go directly to what would it mean for our kids to be able to have that safe place, to be able to ride a bike, to be able to run, to be able to walk. And so to me, it's pretty simple. It's really about, is this something that our kids are going to be able to have a better life in Dover? And I'm pretty sure the answer to that is yes. So that's where I'm going. I think I'd say vote yes and do it for our kids.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Schlenker?
Sorry, old age is setting in. I hope not. My name's Ralph Schlenker. My wife and I live at 30 Donnelly Drive. We've been there for over 26 years. I'm here to speak against the rail trail because I think it will irrevocably change the nature of Dover. We live in a rural community, as has been stipulated. It's not suburban, and that distinction is important. There are many reasons why Dover is rural today, and most of those relate to people and organizations in the past. Consider, for example, Amelia Peabody, who acquired all the land between Mill Farm on Denham Street and Powesett Farm. A great deal of that land is for our benefit today. Consider the Chase Woodlands, okay, donated by the Chase family approximately 20 years ago. Consider the big field at the junction of Farm and Springdale Avenue, derived for our benefit by the Dover Conservation Land Trust. That same trust just acquired an additional 40 acres at the top of Pegan Hill to add to the 30-plus acres that are already there for our infinite enjoyment. There are many organizations, many people that have contributed, so the fact that we have this bucolic rural environment today is not by accident. 23 years ago, I stood in this very spot and talked against two proposals at that time. One was to, ironically, extend the commuter rail along the same rail path from Needham to Millis. The second proposal was to bring a large water supply in from Elm Bank. Either one of those would have irrevocably changed this town. We voted them down, and we have Dover today the way it is. One point that needs to be made, to the best of my knowledge, and I don't think anyone can refute this, the MBTA and all of their conversions of rail trails in Massachusetts, they have never negotiated anything other than the standard lease.
15 seconds.
Thank you. The idea that somebody can negotiate a more favorable lease, I think, is not going to happen. Finally, I have been appalled with some of the behavior over the past few weeks. Dover's tradition is to be pleasant and not to post vicious things on social media or in emails, and not to have people's signs knocked down. Mine lasted less than 12 hours. This is not Dover. This is insane. And I urge you not only to vote this article down, but also to reclaim the high moral ground and the moral compass that Dover used to have. Thank you.
Gentlemen over in the aisle, please stand up. Right there, yep, and then I'll get you next.
Hi, Doug Munsell, Greenwood Road. Just introducing one other topic for your consideration. Both sides have obviously good points. My consideration is that the train used to go through Dover 40 years ago. I would like to see, I grew up in New York City. I rode my bike every day. There are ticks on both sides of the road. There are ticks in your backyard. There are ticks on your dog. There are ticks everywhere. Sorry, you're not going to get rid of them by walking on a rail trail. But as far as riding your bike, you can ride your bike at school. You can ride your bike on pass. I rode mine down, 7th Avenue. So that's just the way it is. But the issue it really is, if you tear up the tracks, you will never have the rail. That is no longer an option, no longer on the table. You are now, we're already viewed as remote from Boston, which we are not, but we are perceived as remote because we do not have rail service. That does impact your appreciation of your home, whether you like it or not. There are three factors. There's your school, there's your town center, and there's your commuter rail, or at least some sort of public transportation. So I wish you'd consider that before you vote. Thanks very much.
Mr. Chimeno. 2 minutes, George.
Hi, George Chimento, 42 Powesett. I've lived here 31 happy years, been on the planning board 11 years, and have spent a lot of time for open space. First, I'm here to explain something about the Norfolk Hunt Club, which I bet a lot of you aren't familiar with. First, the Hunt Club does not just hunt once a year. It's something that happens 3 or 4 times a week, and every day from the kennels, which are on Center Street, the hounds are taken out to exercise. They don't just cross the rail. They're on trails that go alongside the rails for miles. Now, where are they going? They're going to open space that is, a lot of it is actually in trust for the Hunt Club. And you know what the terms of the trust are? If the club can't keep hunting, the trust gets dissolved and the land gets sold. So we've got this bizarre situation where in pursuing open space for a trail, we may very well be creating the demise of the Hunt Club. You cannot hunt these hounds, take them out, and incidentally, these hounds don't kill things. This is a drag hunt, but they need to be trained every day with horses. They are taken out along the trails. So now imagine, if you can, children on bicycles, joggers, people with dogs, and horses and hounds right next to each other going on and on. It simply is not a workable situation. The hunt won't be able to continue with that type of environment.
15 seconds.
The result is we need to understand better the interaction here. Incidentally, it's not just the land, the more than 100 acres here in Medfield that's for the hunt. Many private landowners keep their land open because of the hunt. The first 2 ladies I met in Dover in 1985 said, "George," they came into my pasture, "you keep your land open for the hunt." There is a social pressure that the hunt exerts throughout town that is for the benefit of everyone. We cannot have a rail trail if it means the hunt itself will dissolve. And we really are thinking of those sorts of stakes. This is not to over-dramatize. I'm choking up a bit because this hunt has been here for over 100 years. It's part of the fabric of this town. You don't throw away history of 100 years for something of this sort.
Thank you, Mr. Chino.
Thank you.
Gentleman in the corner.
Good evening. My name is Rob Bunn. I live at 11 Knollwood Drive, and the home that I own abuts the abandoned MBTA rail corridor, and we would be one of the 15 single-family homes that would abut a greenway that runs from Springdale Avenue down to Hunt Drive. I am a passionate supporter of this project, and I encourage you to vote yes. I can tell you that you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone in this town who would end up using this trail more than I would, more than my family would. I can see my boys on it almost every day. I know that there are abutters who at this stage in the process feel very differently, and that's not at all uncommon. It usually takes exposure to a trail to realize what a special benefit it is to live along one. And I want to share with you an excerpt from a letter that was written by a rail trail abutter in Salem to the Salem Evening News when a town nearby was considering a rail trail conversion. And the letter starts by going through all of the apprehensions that this individual had when the trail was announced: concerns about crime, concerns about property values declining, concerns about privacy, that generally it would be a bad thing to live on the trail. The good part of his letter is what I want to share with you because it is the part that where he shares the historical perspective. So I'll read now. Having lived with the bike path for several years now, none of the concerns we had have materialized. The bike path has instead become a haven for families, couples strolling hand in hand, mothers with strollers, children pushing doll carriages, families on bikes, joggers, cyclists, neighbors walking their dogs. The Salem State sports teams work out there, and in winter, it's a popular place for snowshoeing and cross-country skiing.
15 seconds, sir.
Mostly, it has brought neighbors together with a passing hello or a stop to chat while out for a walk. I've never felt unsafe on the path, either day or night, and we've never had a problem to report of any kind. This man's testimony is that trails are good, and they can be good for Dover. I encourage you to vote yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Crowley?
One thing that's been neglected in this discussion is the cost. The number we've seen is $1 million plus. If they find herbicides and insecticides, we're in trouble. We haven't seen anybody put up $1 million plus. The town certainly doesn't want to do it. That would take a big vote. I just want to read to you what's gone on. That's the 1984 town report. They talk in that in the Conservation Department about the concern for insecticides and herbicides on the rail trail. This, I'm going to put that down. This is the permit that Bay Trelawney got to spray the rail trail between 205 and 29, not too long ago. Here's what they put down. Accord Monsanto, Concentrate Monsanto, Rodeo Monsanto, Roundup Pro Monsanto, Accord SP Dow AgroSciences, Grippo Plus, I don't know how to pronounce that, Accord Concentrate Dow, Escort DuPont, Escort XP DuPont, Crinite DuPont, Oath, and it goes on and on. It's 17 times, 17 different products. And they've been spraying this rail trail for 30 or 40 or 50 years. No one knows how much has gone on for coal dust and stuff like that. And if they dig into it and find pollution, who's got the problem? MBTA doesn't want it. They want to stick it on us. So let's vote no on this thing and get it over with. I'd like to move the question, Mr. Moderator.
There's been a motion to move the question. Please, somebody please stand to make the second. You'll need a microphone. Ms. Leonard? I'm sorry, a motion has been made. The motion is privileged. Motion has been made to move the question. That is a privileged motion. There can be no further discussion if the motion is seconded. Is there a second for the motion? Right over here, please. Okay, Elizabeth Leonard, 3 Rocky Brook, has seconded a motion. This is a non-debatable motion. It requires a 2/3 vote, and unfortunately, as I stated, it is not debatable. All those in favor of moving the question, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The ayes have it. Now, if you want, if seven people doubt my determination, they can stand, and we can move to a standing count. Okay. Fine. Let's move to a standing count. The motion, it's a motion. No, I'm sorry? Oh, well, no, we have it here too. Yes, sir.
We're going to need to do a standing count.
I think you need to clarify what this means. This is a 2/3 majority vote to bring the motion to the floor. This is not a vote on the actual motion.
That's right, sir. Okay. This was a 2/3 motion to bring the question to a vote. So we are now going to have a standing vote with respect to whether we will then move to the actual vote on the motion.
Yeah.
All right? So with all those in favor of voting on the main motion, in other words, going directly to a vote on the main motion, please stand. All those in favor, please stand. It's not even close. Okay, you may be seated. You please be seated. Thank you. Now, if I could ask all those who are opposed to the motion to move the question, please stand. Please remain standing until the counter tells you that you may sit. Thank you. Well, that's the thing. The motion to move the question passes 891 to 53. Citizens were within their right to question my call of the vote. Our bylaw and state statute requires that if 7 people challenge my determination, so they were well within their rights to do so. And that's why I reminded them that they had that right. So many thanks to the citizens. Now let's move to the main vote. Again, since the motion has been made, we cannot debate the question any further. We are going to have to vote directly now on the motion. So all those who are in favor of authorizing the Board of Selectmen to negotiate a lease with respect to the rail trail, please stand to signify your yes vote. And please stay standing until the counters tell you that you may be seated. If I could ask all those now opposed to the motion to authorize the Board of Selectmen to please stand.
You've seen enrollment decrease a lot at TC?
It's going up again. Applications are going up again. The enrollment has, and we actually cut the class to 230 and down from 3. The motion carries 475 to 334. I would ask you to stay so that we can push through the rest of this meeting. With a little bit of luck, we can get through the rest in about 15 minutes. That way, we will not have to reconvene for a continuance till tomorrow. And I would also like to remind people that there can always be a motion for reconsideration, although I hope not, given how late the hour is. But people have that right. Okay, well, on to the next article. Article 19. Mr. Forte.
Mr. Moderator, I move that this article be dismissed.
Okay, a motion has been made to dismiss Article 19. Is there a second? Mr. Cohn?
Second.
Mr. Cohn has seconded. This is a majority vote to dismiss Article 19. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously in the main hall.
Unanimous? Yes.
Carried unanimously in the cafeteria. Article 20. Also dealing with Minuteman. It will also involve a motion to dismiss. Mrs. Gernard?
Mr. Moderator, I move that this article be dismissed.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mrs. Gilbody has second. This is a motion to dismiss Article 20, a majority vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously in the main hall.
Unanimous? Unanimous.
Also carried unanimously in the cafeteria. Article 21, Stormwater Management and Erosion Control. Mr. Merrill.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town adopt Chapter 117 of the Town of Dover General Bylaws entitled Stormwater Management and Erosion Control for the purposes of establishing methods to regulate non-storm water discharges into municipal separate storm sewer systems, parentheses MS4, to comply with the requirements of the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination Systems, parentheses NPDES, permit process as shown in a document on file in the office of the town clerk, and further that non-substantive changes in the numbering of this bylaw be permitted in order that it would be in compliance with the numbering format of the Dover Town Code.
Thank you, Mr. Merrow. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mrs. Gurnett has second. Does anybody want to speak on this issue? This is a majority vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously in the main hall.
Unanimous? Yes, unanimous.
Also carry unanimously in the cafeteria. Article 22, Reserve Fund. Mr. Stewart.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the sum of $250,000 be appropriated for a reserve fund for fiscal year 2017 to provide for extraordinary or unforeseen expenditures pursuant to Chapter 40, Section 6 of Massachusetts General Laws, and that to meet this appropriation, $175,000 be raised and $75,000 be transferred from the overlay surplus.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mr. Lawrence has seconded it. This is a majority vote. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously in the main hall.
Unanimous?
Yes, sir.
Okay, first things first, it's unanimous.
Oh, a motion has been made for reconsideration. Do I hear a second? Do I have a second in front? Could somebody come down here with a microphone, please?
Jim, we have to close out 22. Just say 22 is unanimous.
Okay. Before the motion was made, we had the vote, which was unanimous on Article 22. And now we are considering the motion for reconsideration with respect to the trail rail. Do I have a second? Yes.
He did not state the article.
Okay, you're correct. Mr. Crowley, you did not state which article you want to have reconsidered? Well, he can remake the motion.
I move reconsideration Article 18.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, I don't hear a second. Let's move on to Article 23. Article 23, Mrs. Canny.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the sum of $178.70 be transferred from free cash for the purpose of paying Lovell Landscape Service Incorporated $178.70.
Okay, this is an 80% vote because it pertains to a bill for services in a prior fiscal year. So it's an 80% vote. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously in the main hall.
Are you unanimous? Yes.
Motion also carried unanimously in the cafeteria. Article 24, supplemental appropriations. Mr. Cohn.
Mr. Moderator, I move that this article be dismissed.
Second?
Second.
Mrs. Gurnett has seconded a motion to dismiss Article 24. This is a majority vote. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously in the main hall.
Unanimous? Unanimous.
They also carry unanimously in the cafeteria. Article 25, free cash. Mrs. Gilbody.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town transfer from free cash the sum of $652,542 to meet the appropriations for fiscal year 2017, and that the Board of Assessors be authorized to use the same amount to reduce the tax rate for fiscal year 2017.
Thank you, Mrs. Gilbody. Do I hear a second?
Moderator, I second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Merrill, for the second. This is a majority vote. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously in the main hall.
Unanimous.
Also was unanimous in the cafeteria. Article 26, Stabilization Fund. Mrs. Gilbody.
Mr. Moderator, I move that this article be dismissed.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart, for seconding the motion to dismiss. This is a majority vote. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously in the main hall.
Yes, unanimous.
Mr. Lawrence.
Mr. Moderator, I have one announcement. The post-town meeting party is canceled because of the hour, and I move that this meeting be dissolved.
Mr. Lawrence has moved that this meeting be dissolved. Mrs. Canny has seconded. All, wait a minute, whoa. We have to have a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you.